All right, we'll call to order the February 5th meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Supervisor Cerna?
Here.
Frost? Here. Natoli?
Here.
Peters?
Here.
Kennedy?
Here.
You have a quorum. This meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors is cablecast live on the Metro Cable 14, the Local Government Affairs channel on the Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T UVerse cable systems. The meeting is closed caption and is webcast at sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will be repeated Friday, February 8th at 6 p.m. on Channel 14. A DVD copy is available for checkout from any local library branch. Members of the audience wishing to address the board may fill out a speaker slip and hand it to staff. When the chair calls your name, please come to the podium. Also, please silence your electronic devices at this time.
Thank you. And would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For your consent matters, items 1 through 20, you do have an ordinance that you're introducing, item number 9. It's the modification of recorded final maps or parcel maps, introducing and adding Chapter 22.2, Title 22 to the Sacramento County Code relating to the modification of final maps and parcel maps. You're waiving reading and continuing this to February 26 for adoption. You're also adopting an ordinance amending Section 2.115.265 of the Sacramento County Code relating to the definition of primary election period. This concludes the clerk's notes.
Do we need a motion to continue then for number 9?
No.
No, okay, all right. Is there any questions from the board? Yes, Supervisor Peter?
I'd like to the record to reflect that I'm recusing from items 7 and 8 due to potential conflict of interest.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
7 and 8.
Thank you.
Any others?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. On item 9, I'd like to just ask a couple questions on that if I could.
I have a comment about item 9.
Okay.
On item 9, okay, that's the modification of the recorded final maps or parcel maps.
Mr. Tully?
Okay. Yeah. My question is that, so under what conditions are the authority, so this gives staff the authority, or it allows the item to come back to the Board of Supervisors via a abbreviated process? It wasn't clear to me as it relates to if there are changes, and I understood the example. It was just one example that using, I guess, a situation where there's conditions in place regarding oak trees 35 years ago, and the house was never built. Now that's changed, physical conditions of the property. But it's not clear to me that on the final map, then who is this authority vested in? And I get it that it doesn't have any impact necessarily to the property, does not the property owner put any additional fees on the property owner. But what about, again, consideration if you had public hearings and you had neighborhood input and there was due consideration in the hearing process? So I guess I'm curious about that. It's not clear to me. So,
Supervisor Tully, I do not have the answer right now. If you can hold this item until 2 p.m. so I can have appropriate staff respond.
sure, that's fine. Thanks.
My apologies, it's item 10 that I have a comment.
Okay. Item 10, approve the filing of concept proposals for grant funding in an amount not to exceed $2.9 million from the Cultural Community and Natural Resource Grant Program.
Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge that I did have a conversation with our CEO, Mr. Gill, during my briefing, and made a suggestion that it's not necessarily directly relevant to this particular pot of funding for prospective improvements at Discovery Park, but I did have a chance to meet with representatives from the Miwok tribe last week. We had a great conversation. I learned a lot about the import of Discovery Park, especially the land in and around the confluence of the American Sacramento rivers, its importance to the history and legacy to the Miwok tribe, and I've suggested that Mr. Gill, being somewhat the history buff that he is, that he work with my office to see what we might be able to do in the not too distant future in terms of acknowledging that legacy and that history of the Miwok tribe with some type of monumentation not terribly big, but something that might actually reference the significance of that piece of our county to the Miwok tribe and educate the public at the same time about it. So I appreciate Mr. Gill's interest in this and look forward to working with him on it.
Look forward working on this project too.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair? Yeah, and just on this item, since Mr. Cerna had spoken to it, and I appreciate his comments on what he suggested, the Lower American River Advisory Commission is going to see these, I think, this upcoming Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. And I just want to be clear, so the submittals here are in no rank order because apparently we're going to be asked to have some conversation around that at the Advisory Commission. So, and are you going to be making presentations, Rob, or who's making presentations?
Liz Bellis and park staff will be attending the meeting and making presentation. There is overlap between this item and the projects which will be considered in that forum later on this week. The intent was essentially, if we're not successful in one, we certainly don't want to forego an opportunity with another potential funding source to advance these projects.
Aren't they ranked?
And these projects are not ranked at this point with this action.
So for clarification, how will you be explaining that at the commission? Because we've got other projects, some of them from the city and maybe others as well, that are going to be asked within the context of the Lower American River Advisory Commission and the Wildlife Commission at the state. Are we going to be able to pick and choose, or are you're going to advance both of them and just take our shot? Or because we are going to be asked to rank as the committee, I believe, on Thursday to do that, and we have competing projects. There's not nearly enough money there to fund all the projects, if my recollection serves me correct. So
That's, as I understand the process that's been set up by the staff to the commission, which is the Wildlife Conservation Board, there was no ranking requested of submissions to it. That's part of the process that you're going to be engaged in
Right.
terms of determining what the commission sees, the commission staff supporting your conversation about how those projects will be stacked. One of the projects, there were 3 projects which we submitted. There was the FEIA fire suppression improvements, Discovery Park, and soil-borne farms. As I recall, the FEIA project was not invited. We submitted an initial grant application, and we were not invited in that Wildlife Conservation Board process to advance that project for a final submission. The other 2 projects were. So when in your deliberations later on this week, you will see the soil-borne farm project along with Discovery Park, and then several other projects that qualify for that funding program. The staff did not request any ranking. That's what you'll be working on later on this week.
So is the intent here to, I guess back to my earlier question, to advance these projects, 2 of the 3, depending upon what happens at the commission meeting later this Thursday? And so if those are recommended, obviously the funding will have to be determined ultimately by the Wildlife Conservation Board. But I think our advisory recommendation will carry some weight in that process, at least as I understand it. And therefore, if funding is received from another source, or because this is a tight timeline, you have to submit these by next week. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to run up to flagpole both ways, and then if you get funding on one, you'll turn it back on another.
We'll see what happens this week. Essentially, as you mentioned, we do have a tight timeline. If we didn't get this authorization from the board today, we couldn't pursue the Prop 68 funding, which is why we're before you today. If we are successful later on this week receiving funding, we'll have to consider that and how we advance that project.
All right, so you gauge that before you make the applications under this particular.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We will be pushing off item number 10 and 9 until this afternoon. Please vote.
Unanimous vote, and let the record reflect that Supervisor Peters recused from items 7 and 8. Item 21 is the presentation of resolution recognizing the First 5 Sacramento Children and Families Commission on its 20th anniversary.
Mr. Cerna.
It is your big day. Mr. Chair and members of the board, it's my my honor today to be in front of you and full chambers here to acknowledge what I would humbly suggest is our most important sister agency here in Sacramento County. Of course, I'm biased as I chair that commission, but it is my distinct pleasure to bring before this board a resolution recognizing 2 decades, 20 years of terrific service, incredible service by our first 5 Sacramento Commission. And in the resolution, it's acknowledged not only the mission of the commission, the fact that our history, like all the other first 5 commissions across the state of California, was born out of Proposition 10, passed by the voters of the state in 1998, which taxed tobacco products to fund the mission of all 58 First Fives. But the fact that we have been, I think, very responsible stewards over the years. I saw my predecessor, Mr. Dickinson, in the back, who was also a chair of First Five Commission for years. I assume, Roger, that's why you're here. Okay, you want to come join us? But it really is an honor for me to not only bring this resolution before the board to acknowledge the commission publicly for its great work, but just a few weeks ago, we had a terrific event called Raise Up Sacramento. And we had, how many people there? 170?
175.
175 folks that joined us at the Golden One Center. And it was our singular event to acknowledge the history of the commission, but more importantly, to look forward to its future, working especially with our business community as they have a vested interest in what we call cradle to career and all the great work that First Five does. And just to give you and the public an idea of the amount of fiscal investment that the commission's made over the years, nearly $320 million in those 20 years. And of course, we don't gauge our success by how much tax we derive from tobacco sales and spend. We really gauge our success in terms of making sure that this county's children and families for children aged 0 to 5 really have as great an opportunity as possible to succeed, whether it be their early learning, their early development, their health, their dental health, all the above. We, and I say that proudly with everyone that stands behind me, and you're going to hear from Julie Galelo, our very capable executive director, in a minute, that it's an extraordinary team effort. And so again, on behalf of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors, I want to present this resolution recognizing the First Five Sacramento Children and Families Commission on its 20th anniversary. Congratulations. Who's doing the photo?
Carrie and Aaron.
Where's Aaron? There you go. Floor is yours.
Okay.
And Roger, if you want to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Cerna and members of the board. I am delighted to accept this resolution on behalf of our 12 very dedicated staff and 14 passionate commissioners. It's truly a privilege to do this work, to work with our amazing leader and the whole First Five team toward our mission, which is to ensure that every child in Sacramento County has a healthy birth and has the very best start to life. I am very excited for our next decade, 20 more years, 2 decades. I think that the partnerships that we've forged under our commission's leadership will continue, and that we will see even deeper investments in Sacramento County's youngest children. So thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Thank
you.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair and members. As fond as I have memories of these chambers, it takes something special to bring me back and to see a few different faces, some old faces, some recycled faces, but friendly faces all together. What makes First Five so unique in Sacramento County, I think, is the way in which we approached it at the outset. It was unusual, if not unique, across the state because there was no template. And we ultimately decided on a commission of 7 principal members, and you're familiar with the membership of the commission, and 7 alternates. But the 7 alternates were not relegated to only filling in when the principals weren't present or available. We all sat at the dais. We all sat and participated in the work of the commission. And the benefit and the value of that, in my judgment, as the one who was fortunate enough and truly had the pleasure of serving as the chair for the first 11 years of the commission, was that we got a much broader range of discussion and perspectives as we went about the work of the commission. The other thing that the commission represents and Prop 10 represents is a unique opportunity virtually in government anywhere at any level to try things that are unknown, untested, and uncertain. We were given license by the proposition to be a laboratory, along with our 57 fellow counties, laboratories of invention and innovation, of experimentation, of trying things that would help nurture the development of children 0 to 5. And I think the lasting contribution of First Five to the children and families of the state of California is that in the course of that innovation and experimentation, we found a host of approaches that made a difference in the healthy development of the children of Sacramento County, of the support of their families, and throughout the state of California. I want to also just give great credit to the person on the board who served along with me for all those years, Muriel Johnson. And together, I think Muriel and I formed a team that made a real difference, and I would like to think that that's the case, a real difference on behalf of the children and families of Sacramento County. And that work goes on under Chair Cerna's leadership and the work that the commission staff continues to do to benefit all our children and families in Sacramento County. Thanks very much for celebrating these 20 years.
Thanks,
Thank you, Roger.
Thanks, Roger. Okay, we're a little ahead, so why don't we take some off-agenda speakers, and we'll start with Rick Hodgkins.
What's the first name?
Yes. Here. We can give him a microphone, that'd be great. There you go, Rick.
Hello. Thank you. I couldn't hear very well as people were exiting the room, but thank you, Patrick Kennedy and County Supervisors. I'll try to make this brief because this is, I felt I needed to come here and talk about 3 things real quick. One, I am coming here because I want to be a future member of the county's Disability Advisory Commission. I better introduce myself. My name is Rick Hodgkins. I am a disability rights advocate, disability rights activist, and disability rights extremist. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, although I am a member of Capital People First, which is an organization run by and for people with developmental and intellectual disabilities. I also serve on the Department of Developmental Services Consumer Advisory Committee, which I cover Sacramento and 9 other counties through Alta California Regional Center. The second thing is I understand I missed the consent calendar, but I was somewhat curious about the mental health. And as a former patient in the Sacramento County mental health system, I have Medi-Cal and Medicare, and while Medi-Cal does cover things like counseling, which is what I really need, I cannot get counseling through county mental health. It's either medication or nothing, and medication doesn't help me because I'm depressed, not because of a chemical imbalance, but because of situations that I've experienced. So I cannot get counseling through any county mental health, not even Turning Point. And third, while federal law still permits discrimination against people that use housing vouchers to help them pay their rent, what a lot of states have done and what many local jurisdictions here in the state of California have done, and local jurisdictions in other states have done, is they've passed ordinances that will prohibit landlords from discriminating against people based on the fact that they use a housing choice voucher to pay their rent. I'm also a housing choice voucher participant, and I live out in the suburbs and would like to live closer to light rail, but I can't find a place safe enough that will take my voucher. So I think maybe we need to address that. One way to address the housing crisis is having more landlords accept vouchers. Now, the landlord doesn't have to accept everyone that has a housing voucher. If a person's background is clean, like mine is, then they should not be turning away someone with a housing voucher. I can only speak for myself. I cannot speak for those that have had dirty backgrounds and whatnot. So I think we should, as part of dealing with the housing crisis, pass an ordinance countywide that says landlords cannot refuse someone housing simply because they have a housing voucher to help them pay their rent. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you, Rick. Dan Adderholt. What was his name? Rick Hodgkins.
Hello, you guys. As you guys know, I'm Dan Adderholt, founder and leader of American River Homeless Cruise, also a homeless advocate. I just want to come here and thank Patrick Kennedy for having the sheriffs come down there and talk to the homeless down there and having resources for February 13th coming through without telling them they have to leave right away. You guys are working with the homeless. I want to thank you for that. But also, I want to bring to your guys' attention, though, that the other law enforcement, the sheriffs are behind it. I already talked to the sheriffs when I was down there. They are behind it. They're bringing the resources in on February 13th to help the homeless and everything, which they said you guys recommended to do, and that's it, and the SHRA. But I've been informed that other law enforcement officers are going down there and confusing the homeless and confusing me, and I'm sure other homeless advocates as well, about them having to leave because they're going down there. I've had reports of them going down there saying they have to leave other law enforcement agencies when the sheriffs are the ones that control that area, and the other law enforcement agencies shouldn't be going down there telling the homeless that. So I just want to bring that matter to your attention, you guys, and thank you guys.
Okay, thank you. George Knowlton.
Good morning, Your Honor, or good morning, Mr. Chairman and board.
I'm good with that.
Confused me there.
Yeah.
Feels like court almost.
I got titles coming at you.
I want to make sure before I start that you guys got my handout. Did you guys get my handout from the clerk? I'm here for the housing development concerning ADUs. I put my argument in writing so that you would have it, but basically, as I understand it, and as I put forward in my writing, SB 229 was designed and implemented to make affordable housing in our suburban areas. I have a project in Fair Oaks that I have now been put into special conditions, which is $7,500 LOP fee plus 4 to 7 months of delay for a simple 600-foot apartment above a garage that already exists. Now, Sacramento County is saying that this code is it adheres to SB 229, and it's okay for Sacramento County to limit the height of an ADU to 20 feet and to limit it to a single story. I would agree with that on one point, that the state sets forward that an ADU can only be single story and that it can only be 600 to 800 square feet. That 20 feet fits in there, but it also mandates that it can be put above an existing garage. So the ADU itself can be single story, but the whole building should be able to be two-story. And just simply because my ADU is going on top of a garage, which is actually the most economical way to build an ADU, I see no reason why we need to go to special conditions. In fact, I see that state law says you cannot make us go to special conditions, that we're supposed to go to administerial review. Now, the excuse and reason I keep getting is, oh, but if you build a two-story on the same setback, well, you can look in the other people's yards, and we got a lot of feedback back from homeowners saying, oh, we're scared of this, we can't have this happen, we need to be able to review it. Well, I ask you to look at the demographics of Fair Oaks. I would imagine there's 25,000 plus homes. I would imagine half of them or more are two stories, which means there's approximately 12,500 or more homes in the immediate area of my project that are two-story and are looking down into people's yards with the same setbacks. The state sets forward in 229 setbacks are the same.
Can you wrap up?
I'm done. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Can I just say, I think you've been in touch with County Counsel Krista Whitman on this subject, and she believes that the county is correct.
And as I replied to Krista Whitman, her response was not only arrogant, but was incomplete. I asked 4 specific questions of you, Mrs. Peters, of the county, and I have not received answers to those 4 questions. Still have not received answers on how your code complies with state law that says it has to be affordable, has to be an administerial review, how this is a special condition, right? And I put in here, how does county council say that you can change the verbiage when the state says the only way you can put height restrictions is if it's a registered historical place? County says only if it's going to create problems with the neighborhood, and you might think it is. That's not what the state law says. So Krista Whitman's answer is incomplete. That's why I'm here. You didn't respond to my answers. You didn't respond to my emails. Your chief of staff did, finally, after I got upset. But I got to tell you, Mrs. Peters, I was very disappointed in your service.
Thank you for your comments.
If there is a analysis of that that
Krista's
we have, then could we share it with the rest of the board? I'd be interested in seeing it.
Yeah,
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
Yes. I can make, if you'd like, I can say one thing real
Sure,
quickly.
sure.
I'll stand over here by Mike.
Yeah, this is off agenda.
I understand that. Yeah. I was just going to say that the response he was requesting had to do with the standards for the California Register of Historic Places, and that's separate than height. So I'll address that.
Thank you.
Separately.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. We don't comment back on off-agenda items, so thank you for your comments.
And can I put myself on an agenda for a future date? Do I do that at this point? Because it sounds like I'm getting the same answer that I got before, a non-answer.
Well, I would, no, not on the
My
agenda,
4
but
questions
I
had
will
nothing
get
to
a
do with
letter.
historic places. So I don't know what Chris is talking about.
I've asked for county council to provide all board members with the analysis, so I can't really answer it because I haven't seen it, and
Okay.
we're now going beyond what we really should comment on an off-agenda item.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a minute.
You can take up nominations in 1 minute if you'd like.
Let's do nominations.
Okay, that would be item number 28. For your nominations, you are continuing to February 26, North Highlands Foothill Farms Community Planning Advisory Council, Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Commission, continuing to March 12th, Local Child Care Planning and Development Council, continuing to March 19th, the Cosumnes Area Community Planning Advisory Council, County Service Area 4B, Slough House, Wilton, Cosumnes, County Service Area 4C, Delta Citizens Municipal Advisory Council, Developmental Disabilities Planning and Advisory Council, Natomas Community Planning Advisory Council, and the Southeast Area Community Planning Advisory Council. For your matters today, we have Art and Arcade. Supervisor Peters.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to reappoint Tina Bonilla, Thomas Roten, Craig Kramer, Damian Schiff, and Brenda Davis as District 3 appointees.
Okay. Carmichael Old Foothill Farms Community Planning Advisory Council.
I'd like to reappoint Nicholas Blase and Rick Desmond to the Carmichael CPAC and continue the remainder to February 26.
Supervisor Frost.
Please continue to February 26.
Okay. Children's Coalition, Mr. Kennedy.
The Chiefs recommend reappointing Andrew Keller and nominating Brianna Mullen, Riley Hopkins, and Bradley Miller to the Children's Coalition and waive the process.
Second.
Vote.
Unanimous vote.
Okay, and we will continue the remainder to March 19th.
Okay. County Planning Commission, Mr. Kennedy.
Reappoint Alan Hom.
Supervisor Frost.
I'd like to reappoint Christina Pauley.
And Supervisor Natoli.
Yes, I would nominate for reappointment James Shelby. Second.
Equal Employment Opportunity Advisory Committee, Mr. Kennedy.
Chiefs recommend continuing the item to February 26th.
And then we have the Fair Oaks Community Planning Advisory Council, Ms. Peters.
Please continue to March 12th.
And Rio Linda Alberta Community Planning Advisory Council, Mr. Cerna.
I'd like to reappoint Hal Morris.
And Supervisor Frost.
For Rio Linda,
Yes.
please reappoint Susie M. McDonald and reappoint Zachary Arbios.
Okay. Sacramento County Mental Health Board, Mr. Kennedy.
Continue to February 26th.
And then we have the South Sacramento Area Community Planning Advisory Council, Mr. Kennedy.
Continue the item to February 26th.
Mr. Cerna.
I'd like to request the vacancy be continued to March 19th.
Okay. And that concludes your nominations.
Item.
Item 22 is the public hearing on the benefit category change and levy of increased service charges for the 5700 Winding Way subdivision within Zone 1 of County Service Area Number 1.
Good morning. I'm Bob Davison, the Division Chief of the County Engineering Division. And for this proceeding, it's proposed to change the benefit category and the service charge rate for the 5700 Winding Way subdivision from the existing configuration, paying the safety light rate of $2.56 per lot, to the proposed configuration, which would be 14 lots with the enhanced street and safety light rate at $47.96 per lot with the appropriate CPI adjustment. So with that, a notice and one ballot was mailed to the owner of the subdivision, the Winding Way LLC, and staff has received a sealed protest ballot for this proceeding. So with that, I recommend that your board, open the public hearing, consider all written and oral testimony, and consider any objections and protests to the proposed charges, and then close the public hearing and direct the clerk to tabulate the return protest ballot. And after the clerk tabulates the ballot, I will make a further recommendation on today's resolution, depending on whether there's a majority protest or not. So with that, I recommend you open the hearing, close the hearing, and direct the clerk to tabulate the ballot.
Thank you. Any questions before we open the public hearing? No. We will open the public hearing. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item? Being none, we will close the public hearing and have the clerk. We are here with bated breath.
Can I get a drum roll? Okay, so we have received a ballot from the legal owner, Winding Way LLC, parcel number 230-133-005. Site address, 5700 Winding Way, Carmichael, California. And we do have a vote in favor of the $47.96 per residential parcel annual service charge.
Okay, so with that result, clearly there is no majority protest, so I recommend that the board adopts the attached resolution. With Section 3, I'll read in the information that there's currently blanks to be filled in. So Section 3 should read, at the close of the tabulation, the board had received one protest ballot totaling 100% of the total service charges to be levied, of which 100% was in favor of the charges of the change of benefit category, and 0% was in opposition. And with those changes, I recommend that you adopt the resolution.
Thank you. I'll move the item.
Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
Next item.
Item 23 is the amendments to the bylaws of the Locke Foundation and to the bylaws of the Locke Management Association.
Good morning, Chair Kennedy and members of the board. Rob Leonard, Deputy County Executive. On November 14th, 2017, the Board of Supervisors conducted a public hearing on proposed bylaw amendments for the Locke Foundation. The Locke Foundation is one of two bodies that were created by action of the board in the early 2000s associated with various activities and development and improvements and operational issues associated with the town of Locke. The Locke Foundation was organized and continues to operate as a 501c3. I'll speak about the second organization, the Locke Management Association, in just a moment. Resulting from the hearing on November 14th, 2017, the discussion of the board and public testimony, the board directed the county executive to hold a community forum in the town of Locke to discuss the proposed amendments to the Locke Foundation bylaws. The Locke Management Association, that is the other body that was created in the early 2000s, and potential bylaw changes to the Locke Management Association bylaws, and any other community issues. We held two community forums, one on January 23rd, 2018, that focused on the Locke Foundation and the bylaw changes that were considered by the board. And then on February 8th, 2018, we held a community forum addressing Locke Management Association responsibilities, town operational issues, and county services provided to the town of Locke in the community in the Delta. And so with the time that has passed, the Locke Foundation bylaws are back before you today for consideration as they were proposed in 2017, but also the Locke Management Association, which was, as I mentioned, also created in the early 2000s to function essentially as a homeowners association for the town of Locke. The Locke Foundation deals as a 501c3, dealing with educational issues, fundraising, and putting on events that represent the history in the future of Locke, whereas the Locke Management Association is established as a 501c6, and it operates as a homeowners association dealing with operational issues, functional issues, common area issues in the town of Galt.
Not Galt, Locke.
I'm sorry, of Locke.
Close, but a little further to the west.
No, not even close, not even close. And so we bring before you today in a public hearing setting the bylaw changes being proposed by both organizations. In preparation for this public hearing today, we did send out notices to all the property owners in Locke, residents in Locke, posted notices at the Locke Boarding House and also at the library in Walnut Grove, and then also delivered hard copies of the meeting materials for those that weren't able to access the material online. So that was all done in preparation for the meeting today. So what I recommend as we proceed, have Stuart Walthall, who's chair of the Locke Foundation, come forward to the podium and present essentially the changes that are being proposed to the Locke Foundation bylaws. And then following Stuart would be Russell Olms, who will do the same for the Locke Management Association.
Okay, first we have Supervisor Natoli.
Yeah, just before you leave, Rob, if I could, before Stuart comes forward on behalf of the foundation, just want to thank you for your assistance, and obviously certainly County Council and many other county departments. And I know this has taken a bit longer relative to certainly to the foundation's request going back nearly 14 months ago now. But I wanted to just ask you in the staff report, and again, Russell can probably address this when he speaks, but as a follow-on to the community forums in the Locke Management Association, as described here, had a community forum to talk about the bylaws and the proposed changes that were not before this board the first time we heard this, but obviously before us today. And there was a meeting in June of last year, and Laura Mason-Smith, who assisted, and again, I want to thank her for her facilitation efforts, was at the first one. Then there were follow-on meetings, but it's a little bit foggy here as to how the information that's before us today then came to pass. Obviously, the management board went back. I don't know whether they actually went to some sort of balloting process for the proposed bylaws for the management association, but it just says, as intended, no county staff are present at the LMA community forum. Fine, but there's no other further summation here about then what transpired between then and the information is now before us. And so again, Russell and others can address that. But I wanted to ask you, what was your take on what happened after the meeting, which Laura was there, helped facilitate, and then obviously the management board, obviously they have authorities under the current construct. How what's before us today then came into the format that's before us, and how it was decided as to what's in, what's out, because again, we cannot no longer, and we can't unilaterally change it. It requires the LMA board to bring things forward. We can say yes or no to it, but obviously what's before us will ask that we're basically taken out of the equation altogether. So I want to just ask you, because again, you've shepherded this for a bit, so could you just shed some light on that before we get into it?
It's my understanding that following the forum that the Lock Management Association had, there was one or more meetings of the Lock Management Association, which resulted in a decision / action that saw these proposed bylaws coming forward to us today. What the structure of that action was, I think Mr. Olms can address that, or how that meeting occurred.
Were there minutes provided to you about at that meeting?
Yes.
So you have minutes of that meeting in which they made the proposed changes that are being before us today?
Yes.
Was that included in today's packet?
No, it was not included in the
packet. All right, that's all I need for now. Thanks. Okay.
Okay, with that, I'm going to open public hearing, and we're going to actually have two public hearings. One will be the foundation bylaws, and the second, the management association bylaws. So at this time, I'm going to open up the public hearing for the Lock Foundation bylaws.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Morning, Stuart.
And good morning. I'm here again.
Your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Stuart Walthall, and I'm chairman of the Lock Foundation.
Thank you.
And I was here 14 months ago presenting basically, in fact, exactly what I'm going to be proposing again today and what's before you. I didn't want to spend a lot of time. This is why I synopsized with the handouts that I had given you basically what we're after here. The Lock Foundation and the Lock Management Association, it was a very confusing issue when we first came here 14 months ago. In fact, I had a meeting with several supervisors one-on-one to try to clarify the difference between the two organizations. Russell Ohms will address the Lock Management Association, so if I can just quickly tell you about the Lock Foundation changes. We were given a boilerplate back in 2003. The Lock Foundation was basically the same as the Lock Management Association. The LMA being a homeowner association and the Lock Foundation being a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to educate the public about the history and the culture of lock. So there was a whole lot of issues, articles, and sections that needed to be deleted. We have nothing to do, the foundation has nothing to do with the sale of property and the right of first refusal and collection of assessments, etc. The board, the Lock Foundation board, is and has been a separate board, except for 2 members, for the past 3 years. Since Pat Brazil left as a member of both boards, we have pretty much had separate boards. People who want to sit on the Lock Foundation board don't necessarily want to sit on the LMA board and address those issues. we, because of all the mandated seats on the Lock Foundation board, there was no room for the volunteers who had been sitting at the boarding house and leading docent tours, et cetera, and we wanted to have an opportunity to get those people more deeply involved by being members of our board. So this is one of the reasons why we changed our bylaws. Another is the Lock Foundation is in the midst of negotiations with California State Parks and Recreation regarding our concession contract, and they would feel more comfortable if they knew who actually has purview over the Lock Foundation and its bylaws, if it will be the County Board of Supervisors or it will be the Lock Foundation. And in this window of opportunity between November 2017 and now, Martha Esch of Lock has taken the Lock Foundation to court over alleged Brown Act violations. The Brown Act would not apply if the Board of Supervisors did vote to approve our bylaws, because we would be like most traditional 501c3 nonprofits. So rather than just go on and on about the accomplishments and the current activities for the Lock Foundation, I've listed them here. But let me just say the Lock Foundation is the only organization whose sole mission is to advocate for the town of Lock. We're the only ones that do advertising, put on the events, run the boarding house, bring visitors in, do the docent tours, etc. And we, on the foundation, who are unpaid volunteers, and our budget is we get strictly through donation sponsorships and events, is dedicated solely to the mission of the Lock Foundation, which is to advocate for the town of Lock and celebrate its history and its legacy. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. As I said, this particular item right now, we're talking about the Lock Foundation bylaws, not the Lock Management Association. So I'm going to call your name. If you want to speak on the management but not the foundation, if you want to speak on the LMA rather than the foundation, please indicate that you'd rather speak on the Management Association. So, Russell Ooms.
I'm not going to speak about the foundation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Then I'll call you at the next item.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Martha, I've got cards here. Martha Esch.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors.
Good morning.
Thank you for all your hard work. Oh, yes, I have a couple of things to put up on the screen, if that's possible. I would like to speak to both the Lock Foundation and the Lock Management, so would you like me here now, or just to address the Lock Foundation?
Just the foundation.
And then I'll come back for Lock.
Correct.
Great. The Lock Foundation was formed, as was, I believe, already described, as to be one, or both the Lock Management and the Lock Foundation boards were created as one 13-member board of directors to run, and it was created by resolution of the Board of Supervisors here, I believe it was March 13th, 2003. It was a 3-2 vote. It passed with 3 votes. It was created to be one unified, was the wording in the resolution, unified board of directors to run both the Lock Management and the Lock Foundation with a unified vision for Lock. And it was created with, as Mr. Walthall said, with nearly duplicate bylaws, as you have in your packets, for both boilerplate bylaws that came off of a homeowners association. It was stated here by a couple of people so far that the Lock Management Association is a homeowners association. It is not. It is a common interest development that was reorganized as a common interest development in 2009.
We're talking about the foundation.
Okay,
right?
I'm sorry. Okay, the Lock Foundation wishes to amend its bylaws. Mr. Walthall told you correctly that I have filed a lawsuit against Locke Foundation and Locke Management Association as well, writ of mandate on Brown Act violations that have continued to occur. And both Locke Foundation and Locke Management Association are public boards. Locke Foundation has not held a public board meeting open to the public
Can you wrap up?
since
Martha?
approximately April 2016. We ask you all to oppose all amendments made, proposed to you by the Locke Foundation and their
Thank you.
supposed board of directors, who we also state have no legal standing
Thank you,
because
Martha.
they have not been elected.
Thank you. And I'll call
very
you up
much.
again for the next item.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Mendel.
Yes, I would just like to speak in support of the changes that have been made. I used to be on the Locke Foundation. I'm now the current secretary of the Locke Management Association. And I'm not on the Locke Foundation because it's too much work. I was for a long time on both boards, and gladly, and both boards have their individual purpose. And although I really appreciate the original intent, and Don was deeply involved with making all that happen and how it worked out, and it worked out very well for a long time. But as the community matured and the foundation matured, the foundation's now just doing a lot of great things for Locke and preserving the cultural history. So I'd be in support of their changes. As a resident of Locke and as a former board member of the Locke Foundation, and that's about it. I could see a lot of the hard work put into making those changes, and I think it'll work out well.
Thank you. Thanks. James Motlow.
Thank you, your board. I'm in support of the amended changes to the foundation, as I have a long history with Locke. I'm the co-author of the definitive book about Locke, Bitter Melon, which I believe you all have copies of. And I think that this is a very positive direction for the future of Locke, and hope that you will approve these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Douglas Shea.
Good morning.
Morning.
I come here to speak to support the amendment of the bylaw because it enabled me to serve as a board member of the foundation. I came to Locke 4 years ago through research on Chinese heritage in America, and I found Locke. And the first time I came to Locke, I found it's full of history and heritage. I fell in love with it, and I moved to Locke. And I set up a business and tried to promote the organic business there. Unfortunately, the building caught fire in 2016. Since then, I moved away from Locke, but I continue to work for the Locke Foundation as a volunteer. And I think I have made progress. I've made the difference. I'm passionate about it. So therefore, I come here to speak to you, to give me the opportunity to continue to work for the Locke Foundation as a board member. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last card I have for the foundation bylaws.
May I speak? I misunderstood before. I thought I was presenting for the LMA. May I speak to this issue?
Are you speaking for the LMA?
No, for the Locke
For the
Foundation.
foundation? Sure, sure. And your name is again?
Yes.
Russell Holmes.
Thank you.
I'm the current, pardon me? Yeah, I'm the current chair of the Locke Management Association, but I was before, this is the second time I've been the chair. And we used to hold meetings where we were both the Locke Foundation and the Locke Management Association. And it's totally cross purposes. We would have our Locke Management Association meeting, then we'd have to close it and reopen it as a foundation. And personally,
Sounds familiar.
myself, as the chairman, I really didn't have the time or the ideas to promote the town as a foundation would. So I love what Stuart's doing with the foundation. He's generating money. It's a focus. We're the nuts and bolts. The entire budget's $42,000, and we fix the roads. And that's all we do. So to ask the board to do both was a lot. So I just want to say I welcome this change.
Okay, thank you. That is the last.
I think you have one other speaker coming up.
I was stalling, Supervisor.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Nothing like putting the new guy on the hot seat. I'm sorry, is it Honeylum?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. And this is on the foundation?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, County Board of Supervisors. My name is Honey Lam. I'm the president of the Chinese American Council of Sacramento and currently sit on the board of the Locke Foundation since 2015. I'm currently also a senior advisor for the Asian Pacific Islander Public Administration's Affairs and providing guidance on matters of public policy. But with respect to the Locke Foundation, I've been as a sitting board member representing the Chinese organization since 2015, whereby we had a centennial. I was the co-chair of planning that centennial celebration. What a festival. We closed off the street, had over 600 people attending our festival, educating the public about the Chinese contribution to the Delta area, and very proud that I'm a member of the Locke Foundation. What is important is that this is the last remaining rural town founded by the Chinese, and it is a national historical landmark. We don't want to forget that. But the point of fact is that there's a separation in what we do as a foundation and also as a property management organization. Without the property management, we cannot focus on the educational aspects and to educate and provide tools for the public to come to visit our town. Very importantly, that there has to be a separation. What the Chinese American Council of Sacramento, we went through a transition ourselves. Frank Fatt founded our organization as an advocacy group, 501c4. We now have a 501c3 for tax-exempt purposes. I am support of the change of the bylaws of the foundation. Without the changes, there's limitations on who we can select to sit on our board. We have very few limited resources. Very important to engage a community, invite people to sit on the board so that we continue the education, continue helping the communities with integrating a positive role model for the Chinese community, and also to educate the public.
Thank you.
At the moment, we have an exhibit of the 150-year anniversary of the Transcontinental Railroad. We have an exhibit on loan from Stanford University. We're very proud of our accomplishment as a foundation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Wu, we are currently hearing the foundation. If you're here to speak on the foundation, please approach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And we will be hearing the Management Association next.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Darrell Wu. Thank you for reappointing me to the Locke Management Association. I also serve on the Locke Foundation, one of only two board members from the LMA that also serve on the foundation. I stand in support of changing the bylaws, and I hope that you consider them and change them for the Locke Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that's the last card I have. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the bylaws, recommended bylaws changes to the foundation? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Supervisor Natoli?
Yeah, just a question for County Council. In the event that we take the action as is before us here, or consideration of amending the bylaws for the foundation, How quickly is that effective? Is it effective upon action today? Is there a period of time that has to be, or does it need to be submitted to the state for any review under their nonprofit status? I'm curious about that.
Question, as she's been
You
involved
need to
with
use your
this.
microphone.
There it went. June Powles-Mays from my office will be addressing that question.
Good morning, June Powles-Mays, Supervising Deputy County Counsel. The bylaws, as they are currently written, do not specify a time frame for effectiveness. So it is likely that if the board authorizes these changes today, that they will go into effect today.
Okay, and would that apply, again, we're not hearing it yet, but under the LMA, is that a similar advice you would give? Is that, if we took those up today
I believe that is accurate. However, the caveat with the LMA is the Davis-Sterling Act may have some requirements that would have to be met, and
okay, well, we can
that may affect the timeline.
Okay, we can have that conversation. I just wanted to be clear about this. So because, again, what's being asked obviously would make the changes that would have the establishment of a different board construct. Obviously, it takes the county out of the equation, and for the reasons obviously has been cited here. But I just wanted to be clear about that for now. Okay, that's all I had for it.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion?
You gonna take these separately, or you want to?
Separately.
Okay. All right, well, with regards to the foundation, then, I think we've had a thorough vetting of this within the framework, certainly of the community. Obviously, there are, still, points of view that may be different in some respects, but I think from the standpoint of the original intent of the foundation, and certainly as was cited by one of our speakers, I was a member of the board at the time when we brought this forward. Obviously, the construct was to unite the land with the buildings and have property ownership that reflected the full level of improvements above ground, but also with the ground, and all went with that. I think the foundation, has been certainly as cited here. The goal is to, from the educational standpoint, certainly the protection and promotion and preservation of the cultural and historical aspects of Locke and what it means to not only to Chinese community but to the broader community. And I think that in light of not only the community forums we've had, but the discussion here this morning and the reflection of the staff report, I'm prepared to move the bylaws as amended for the foundation, recognizing obviously that the organization that has once was tied with the management association, but also with the county, this is going to change that. But I don't think it changes certainly the mission of the foundation, probably strengthens it to the degree that the representation and the efforts can be focused solely on the intent that's outlined in their bylaws, but certainly with the original mission. So I'm prepared to move the
Second.
amended bylaws.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
All right, now we will move to the Lock Management Association bylaws. Mr. Leonard, do we need to have another staff report?
Simply, I would suggest Russell Holmes be asked to come forward to as chair of the Management Association.
Yes, please come forward.
Again, Russell Ohms. These changes have been long awaited and are a long time coming. There's two main ones. One is we're changing the number of members. It's been 16 years. It was originally started with 13 members. The population of the town is 80. If Sacramento County had the same population representation on this board, I'd be talking to thousands. It's just the people, we always had difficulty getting a quorum. The members had to drive from Sacramento. Some people were driving 50 miles one way in the fog. That was just a physical problem. The other problem was many of the members decided not to reappoint. Two of the Chinese cultural organizations are not appointing members. The state parks, which was deemed a member, decided it was a conflict of interest, and the board itself has not yet seated another person. So we've been working with 9 members, and even with that, it's difficult. You know that you've heard the town is, for one reason, is contentious. So a lot of people do not want to run on the board. So it's difficult to even get people to fill the seats. Right now, there's empty seats. So that's why we're changing the membership to make it smaller and to have the same representation. Originally, a lot of the people in town didn't like the fact that there were so many people outside the town. They thought, oh, what are these people coming in telling us what to do? But now that won't be the case for the most part. It'll be the 6 members, 3 commercial, 3 residential, and 1 member at large, and of course a historical seat and 1 other. So that's why we're doing it. And the other one was, of course, the other big change is the Article 10, Lock Prior Residents, Descendants, and Ascendants. This was created to right the wrong of the past. And 16 years ago, it made sense. There were still a lot of people around that had owned buildings, couldn't buy the land. So the attempt was made to right that wrong. And we followed it. We collected, we had a list, and every time a house came up for sale, we notified the prior ascendants and descendants of the property, thinking they would buy or they'd be interested in buying both their building back and the land back. But that never happened. We sent out all those postcards for 16 years, and no one ever responded to it, ever. So it's kind of outlived its usefulness. And the other problem was with this particular, and it was always misunderstood. We've explained it so many times that we have a first right of refusal, as do many boards. But there's the assumption, because of this list, that we're going to take the house and give it to a Chinese family. And we cannot convince people otherwise. People move into town, they read it, and they go, oh, this is racist. You can't do this. You can't take our buildings, blah, blah. And so really, we cannot convince people otherwise. I don't know how to say it. I mean, we tell them that that's not the case. The first right of refusal is limited to the board to make the decision, for the board to own it, and then do whatever they choose to do with it. So those are the 2 big changes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions?
If I could, Mr. Chair.
Foley.
Yeah, Russell, you heard my question to Rob earlier.
Yes, I did.
So if you could maybe just take a
yes,
moment.
well, we extensively advertised our bylaw changes. We had 2 meetings for the public to come through and show up, and we didn't get a lot of people showing up to talk. One meeting was quite full of people, but they confused the CC&Rs with the bylaws, so a lot of the questions were directed at the CCRs, not the bylaws. So we tried to, again, explain that it was just these 2 main changes. But no, that's my recollection.
Okay. So after you had the meetings, obviously, you as the chair of the board, other members of directors are bringing these forward. Was there... Because there is a process as it relates to the election of officers, and I trust for other matters as may relate to assessments or whatever, that there's a balloting procedure. So were the bylaws, because these are significant changes, obviously to Article 10, and and certainly I think that was a very important, significant piece at the time we created this body. But then back to, I think, some of the contention, which has been as it relates to obviously maybe difference of opinion about assessments and what they're used for, and those are properly debated under the governance of the town. But as it relates to open meetings and such, and so you've been up until this point, as frustrating as it may be, governed by the Brown Act.
Yes.
And that will change with the bylaw amendments, at least as I read the current construct. But I wanted to ask you the point about, so where the bylaw changes that are before us today that are recommended by the board through the community forum process, were they balloted? Did you actually submit them, here's the changes, and then ask, because where people may not either be familiar and or not willing to come out to a public meeting, they can indicate through a balloting process, we support these changes. So I guess I'm curious, if did that occur, or was there some sort of?
Well, let me get, Deborah, would you like to answer that? Our secretary. Oh, and James, come on up.
Okay.
Deborah's the secretary, James is the treasurer.
Deborah Mendel.
Hi, Deborah. Hi, Deborah.
We had a number of our own board meetings, as you know.
Right.
I also, when we did finalize changes in our public meetings, I also sent those changes, as you can see them modified in your documentation.
Right, I have the red line version.
All members of the association. So all members of the association received copies of the changes, whether they were able to attend any of our meetings or not. And our treasurer was part of a subcommittee that also held meetings for discussion.
Okay.
James Motlow.
Yes, James Motlow here. I'm currently the treasurer of the Lock Management Association, and I was the chairman of the subcommittee to reach out to the public to get their response to the proposed bylaw changes. As Russell said, there was initial confusion about the CCNRs and the bylaws. There was also, we had two meetings. My sub-chair, Brock Alexander, who's the vice chair of the Lock Management Association, and I both conducted these meetings. The first meeting, I, in error, said only members of the association were to be heard. So we had that meeting, but then I realized, and it was brought to my attention, that it needed to be a public meeting. So we scheduled another public meeting and posted that in a variety of places to have that meeting. We conducted that meeting, and we simply took in information, and Laura May Smith, I believe, was the facilitator that helped us with that meeting. So we took in comments and suggestions in either oral or written form from the various public who showed up, along with members of the associations who were also there. We then took that and put that into suggestions to present to the board members of the Lock Management Association, which we did. We presented those. The board then took those under consideration, and if I remember the sequencing right, the board was able to look at that under a public meeting and then come and look at those changes. They then took them under consideration. They scheduled a second meeting to when those meetings were then, those considerations were then discussed before the board, and made under a vote to approve the changes that you see now presented before you. So I think that pretty accurately brings how they came to be. Yes.
So Stuart, if I understood, James, as I understood from you, Deborah, and Russell, then the process, I appreciate you outlining what that was, and certainly your work as a part of the subcommittee, you and Brock, but there, outside of, if I heard Deborah correctly, once the board had considered him, you sent a copy of what was finalized by the board to folks, but there was no balloting. I mean, so folks, because these are pretty significant changes, obviously from the standpoint of the governance and management of the town. And, you know, if once we approve what's before us in this form or some other form, as suggested, you never ever again have to come before the Board of Supervisors. That may be a good thing from the perspective of folks here in the audience. On the other hand, I do think that in light of the investment, certainly that you as residents and property owners in the town, but others have made in it, I want to be sure and certain that in addition to all that work you've done, and I give you credit for that, that, you know, folks know that this will change the governance structure requirements for the town, and that may be seen as a positive, and obviously it's being recommended by the board of directors. I guess I'm just a bit concerned that everybody didn't get a chance to vote on that, because basically you're severing ties with the county from the perspective of the way this was structured 16 years ago, but also in the way that meetings are required to be conducted. If it falls, as Ms. Powell-Mays said earlier, under Davis Sterling, That's different than the Brown Act requirements, which require a certain level of transparency. I'm not saying that people wouldn't continue to conduct meetings in that way, but that's the law. That's what we operate under. You and any subsequent members of the board and the board itself would not be subject to those specific requirements. And if that's understood and we do that, then so be it. But I just want to be certain that folks understand that, because Article 10 is an important piece. Certainly the structure of your board and how it's constructed, making sure you have quorum and that the elections are called for. That hasn't changed in the document. But I guess my question is, so after this was all vetted, though, it didn't go back. It wasn't a mailed ballot to folks under the one person, one vote, property, one vote. That wasn't voted. The bylaws, the changes.
No, we didn't have a balloting process
Okay,
for the
okay.
changes. We had the public.
Okay, well, that's good. And again, I want to be clear about that. Now, that could be done, though, correct?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
I do understand now, and previously having learned some more things from Ms. Powles-Mays, that Davis Sterling, which I have been studying also for years, we will still be under open meeting act. They have their own open meeting regulations. It's kind of like mirrors the Brown Act in some aspects, and there's a whole lot of things that we've already been following under a Davis Sterling Act also. So
okay. So there may be similarities. Again, that wasn't pointed out in our document. And again, I don't want to get too much into the details here, but it's important because, again, what we're being asked to do here, obviously, is to, at this juncture, sever the ties that have those requirements built into the Brown Act, and again, certainly to continue the self-governance under Davis Sterling, and with the leadership being decided by the folks within the community that are provided for in a vote here. But any subsequent changes to the bylaws then would not involve us, and so I just think this is a very critical juncture, obviously one that you take seriously and we do too. So if I could just ask council then, Mr. Chair, just for a moment here before you hear from the public, can you point out either June or others, what the distinctions are between the Brown Act and what Davis Sterling calls for relative to conduct of public meetings and certainly decisions and structures of the associations as portrayed under the law?
Sure. And I'd also, if you don't mind, like to answer the question that you asked about balloting or polling the membership regarding the amendments to the bylaws. The current bylaws for the Lock Management Association specifically give the directors and the directors only the authority to vote on amendments to bylaws. And so specifically it says that a 2/3 vote of the total number of directors currently serving is required in order to approve or amend bylaws.
But they're not prohibited from polling if they chose to. I mean, but that wouldn't be, it'd be advisory. It wouldn't be, the directors still have the vested authority to bring it forward to us. Is that?
So if they elected to do that, they certainly could, but it is not a requirement in their governing documents.
Okay.
As far as the distinction between the Brown Act and the Davis Sterling Act, the Davis Sterling Act actually is more stringent regarding notice requirements, regarding the conduct of meetings, regarding voting at meetings and things of that nature. The California Civil Code lays out in graphic detail how organizations such as the Lock Management Association must conduct their business. And if they violate the provisions of the Davis Sterling Act, legal action can be initiated by any member of the town in Superior Court. They also have a remedy with the Attorney General's office. So while the Brown Act is an open meeting law and it has many conditions and parameters, the same or similar requirements are set forth in Davis Sterling.
So it requires open meeting, posting in advance, a place of public accessibility, of notice to the public, prohibits secret meetings?
It does.
And does it provide for executive sessions?
Yes, I believe it does.
It does, Davis Sterling does?
Yes.
And does it, and it requires bylaws be in complete concurrence with the law. Obviously, that's the governing statute, but are there any other things within the framework of what's before us today besides what was suggested that would have to bring the bylaws into agreement with the Davis-Sterling Act? Again, I'm not familiar with that act.
So Davis-Sterling is going to supersede the bylaws because it is the law of the state of California. And so if there are provisions in the bylaws that conflict with Davis-Sterling wins. It trumps. So the Management Association will have to comply with it regardless of what their bylaws say. But I have reviewed the bylaws and I do not see any provisions within it that would conflict with Davis-Sterling because many of the provisions that have been changed, if you notice, they may say, like, for example, with meetings, they may dispense with certain notices, but then they say that they will comply with state law. And so that catch-all phrase basically makes the amendments comply with Davis-Sterling.
Okay, thanks for that information. Thanks.
Okay, with that, I will open up the public hearing.
May I make one comment about that?
Sure.
Going into this, we all believed that we would follow the Brown Act. The early meetings back in 2003, the chairman did not know Robert's Rules of Order and did not know the Brown Act. The meetings lasted 6 hours and they were kind of a free-for-all. So
I thought he was talking about me.
We're talking about the LMA. Sorry. Yes, no. So I at first thought it was an undue burden when I started to hear about the Brown Act and how it works, but subsequently I love it. I like the structure of it. It protects us as well as the public, and I know I'm not going to be on the committee that long, and I really want to know what's going on too. I never want to create something where 5 years from now I might come back into town and say, hey, what's going on? And oh no, we don't know. So I don't welcome learning Davis-Sterling, but if that's the case, I will. So I welcome the structure for the board.
Okay, I'm going to call the same cards that we had before. If you are not interested in speaking, just wave it off. So don't feel compelled. Honey Lum. Okay.
Oh, okay, I'll say something. With respect to the property management of the Locke Foundation, it's...
This is the Management Association.
Management Association. It's advisable that the bylaws are changed to reflect the flexibility, and it strengthens the board to do their business. So I do approve the changes to the bylaws.
Thank you. Martha Ashe.
Thank you. Can I put this right here? Does that show up on the screen for you? The amendments to the bylaws were shown, of the Locke Management Association, were shown at one privatized meeting where certain merchants and members of the public were denied from allowing to access that meeting, and that Mr. Motlow referred to that, and that was in, I believe, April of 2018. They put a private meeting, a notice on the door, and kept people, some of the people who are merchants in the town who wished to attend that meeting. So that's the Brown Act. That is one of the things that I have a writ of mandate against these the privatized board. This board took an action vote to change the bylaws to dispense with balloting of the board seats. They already changed that bylaw without your ratification, which is required. They changed the balloting procedures for their elections in March of last year. In December of last year, when Ms. Mendel's name was supposed to be on a ballot for re-election, they decided not to bother having an election. So they have proclaimed once again to be valid board members. They are not. Mr. Ooms, who claims to be the chairman, he counted his own ballots at the March 2017 board meeting. It's on a YouTube video. You can watch that if you care to. There is not one validly elected board member. They may be volunteers, but they are not validly elected. They have already changed our elections. We ask this Board of Supervisors to continue with your authority to oversee this committee. Mr. Natoli, you
Please
asked...
wrap up, Martha. We're
Okay.
at the end of your 2 minutes.
You asked about amendments to the bylaws. We were not balloted. The General Association members were not balloted. You're absolutely right. And this is a copy of amendments that Mr. Terry Black, who stood before you a few months ago and complained about. These are the amendments that we proposed that you don't have in your packets.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Martha.
Douglas Shia?
Yes, I speak for to recommend the change of the bylaw because it offers flexibility and good service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Darrell Wu? We're good, okay. If there are no other members of the public, I will close the public hearing. Back to the board.
Mr. Chair, just in light of, I think, certainly the gravity of what's before us today, and I say that certainly with recognition relative to a number of things that we deal with any given day, but this is a significant change that's being proposed here, and I understand the reasoning why, and I appreciate the willingness of folks to engage at the community level and to, again, the self-governance model with obviously with the various aspects that were introduced into this 16 years ago, and I think certainly we've learned from that, and and whether people judge it as being good or not so good, nonetheless, obviously the town has continued to I think thrive in many ways, and even with some of the contention that comes out of the public deliberation, whether at the local level, and some of that's been here in our chambers as folks have seen things differently. I guess I'm going to ask, though, I think in light of, I think some of my questioning led to this conclusion. I don't know the differences between Davis Sterling and the Brown Act. I appreciate the council, and I think I certainly have confidence in what June has offered here. I would ask, though, and again, I don't think it places an undue burden on the LMA currently, and not to delay this for any lengthy period of time. I think a poll of the general membership, again, would be helpful, certainly to me as the representative of the district, to know that the work that obviously that Mr. Motlow outlined and Russell and Deborah spoke to, that has been, in addition to the notices, and I want to thank county staff for the notices, folks, because this meeting was properly noticed, and the information packet was provided to folks. But I think that's one piece of information that before I would be prepared to act in the affirmative here, to want to know that the changes that are before us, and for whatever people's understanding is of that or concern about it or not, I think that's an important piece because, again, this will be a shift and it will, again, firmly place the burden of governance on the Management Association under the laws of the state of California. It, again, backs the County of Sacramento out from any engagement as it relates to the future of law. Certainly, we still maintain zoning standards and such. But so I would find that useful and helpful. And again, unless there's objections, and certainly I would invite Russell or Deborah or James to come forward through the chair. But I think a poll, if it could be done fairly quickly with, the mail out and or the question. Again, it's advisory, recognizing that the LMA board has properly acted, as I understand it anyway, and brought it forward. At least they're empowered to do that. I'd like to have that, and we have this back before us in, 30 or 45 days, whatever it would take. And so I would ask that's where I would be today before I'm prepared to act on this.
Madam Clerk, what's 30 days out? What meeting would it be if it was 30 days out?
Are they going to get a chance to speak to that?
Yeah.
Can I comment? I just want you to remember that we're an unpaid volunteer board, and we go to court once a week on our own dime. We drive, dress, so we're constantly under. So this is going to take time. So all I ask is your help in helping with this process. We welcome it. I mean, we believe in it. So yes, but if the county could help us do it, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
But what do you mean by the county help you do it?
Well, just help us outline how to do it, how to get the ballots out, how to mail them out, things like that. So we follow exactly what you want. So we don't do something.
Hang on. Mr. Leonard, do you have anything to say to that?
June and I have been just catching up with the conversation and sharing some notes, and I think that she might have some comments to share with the board.
Council?
Thank you. The problem with polling, is number one, action has already been taken by the Lock Management Association Board of Directors. And so if the request is for them to go back and reconsider their action and basically reinitiate the process, because that's essentially what you seem to be asking them to do. So I'm not clear. Are you saying that you would like to send out a poll to your constituents in Locke and get their opinions, or are you asking the Management Association to go back? Because the process as set forth in the current bylaws is that bylaw amendments have to be approved first by the Locke Management Board of Directors, and then they come to this board for approval. So that initial step has already occurred, and you heard this morning the details about the meetings that have taken place in Locke. Where the members of the public were invited to attend. You also heard Mr. Leonard go into detail this morning about the notices of this meeting today that included the strike-through version with the bylaw amendments. Those were mailed, they were posted in the community, and things of that nature. So I'm just not clear as to what exactly the expectation would be.
Okay, with all due respect, yes, all those things are granted. I said that. I know that it's properly before us. But I've heard a lot over the years, and I'm engaged. And my question was fairly simple. I thought it wasn't that they didn't have it appropriately before us. I got that. I said I believed that there should be at least, within that framework of the town. You said it wouldn't be an election, so I set a poll. However that instrument, whatever instrument you used to do that. And I didn't say it wasn't properly noticed, and I get that. And, this has been a long journey. I, as a supervisor of district, spent a lot of time, and will continue to do that because I want to represent my constituency. I want good things for the town of Locke. But I also was asking for another piece of information. It is properly before us, and nothing can happen until we act on this. And so I'm not saying they have to go back and redo their action. I asked them to, again, if Russell asked for assistance in that, I'm prepared, if we needed to help him do a mailing or whatever. I don't want to over-compound or complicate this, but, my comments today are because I take this seriously. I want the town to thrive and prosper. I want it to be in a way that obviously they can govern themselves. But we created this thing. The Board of Supervisors created this 16 years ago, and as we move to a different point, I want to be clear with the folks that currently are members of that association, that not that they only got notice from this board and that they attended public meetings if they chose to or not, but that there was some sort of a survey instrument that reached out to them at that local level. And that's all I'm asking for.
I think Supervisor Natoli, what I'm hearing is the assistance that they're asking for is that they don't have the means, since they're volunteers, to do any kind of survey. Right. What I'm hearing you ask is, can the county do the survey? Is that correct?
I would be fine with that.
I'm asking for clarification.
Yeah.
Because if that's the case, we need to find out the addresses and
We
what
have
the
all that.
magnitude of the survey is. Is it just with the association? Is it with the town of Locke? What would the interest be for us to do the survey?
It would be the same membership that would weigh in. There's an outline in this document as to what that membership, how that's constituted, how they can vote for members of the board's director and/or other matters that would come appropriately before the town.
I think they're nodding their head that it will be the membership, so we can, if this is what the board desires.
And what are we talking about, 31 or 34 different folks, I think, 32.
We can
32.
assist them in sending some kind of instrument, working with them on what the question. Is there anything in particular you would like for us, what's the nature of the question you want us to ask?
The question is the bylaws that are before this body, which we're being asked to ratify, which then, make the changes as suggested, that folks are clear and if they, are supportive or not.
Understood. And it will be
So would it mean that you'd if they voted against it, they would overturn the management's decision?
Not necessarily, but before we let go of this, Susan, I guess my take would be on, then we could say to the board of directors who are represented here that, there's a difference between at least what's being communicated, what, your board obviously is bringing forward and what a majority of those folks that surveyed.
So in essence, it would be an advisory vote.
Yeah, right, I said
Exactly.
advisory,
It's an
yeah.
advisory board,
Yeah.
non-binding. They still have the authority to do it.
Right.
What I'm being asked to do is to ask the membership one more time, here's what it is.
Okay, is 30 days enough?
30 days?
45?
30 days?
Let's go 45.
45 days. Madam Clerk?
That puts us in
April.
April.
Okay. Supervisor Natoli?
I'm fine with that. Yeah. Okay. We could pick a date to return to the board, then, okay.
Yeah.
We can go with April 9th, and let's just leave the time uncertain right
April
now.
9th, okay, and then in the meantime, we'll work with the folks to do that. Okay, that's good. That'd be my motion, that we continue the matter till April 9th, and that in the meantime, we'll do a advisory
Chair will
survey.
second that.
Okay.
Please vote.
Unanimous vote.
Okay, we'll be back here in a few weeks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Item 24 is the report back regarding the enforcement of illegal fireworks in the county of Sacramento.
Flo, can you put it to the first slide? Thank you. Good morning, Chair Kennedy, members of the Board of Supervisors. I am Nancy Newton, Assistant County
You're going to
Executive.
want to speak up.
Can't hear
Nancy.
you.
Oh, let me lean forward. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Let me start again. Good morning, Chair Kennedy, members of the Board of Supervisors. Thank you for adjusting that to tall person, Flo. We're here this morning to provide an overview for the board regarding the use of illegal fireworks in Sacramento County. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of how the presentation will go today. We're talk a little bit about why we are here today in the background. We're going to talk a little bit about the current ordinance for enforcement of illegal fireworks. We'll receive some comments from Metro Fire on their roles and responsibilities, followed by some comments from the Sheriff's Department on some of their roles, responsibilities, and challenges as well in the enforcement of illegal fireworks. We will then have Metro Fire come forward again to conclude remarks and take any questions that you may have, and with help and support with the Sheriff's Office. I want to recognize some of the members that we have out in the audience today. From Metro Fire, we have Chief Todd Harms, Deputy Chief Greg Casantini, and Fire Marshal Lisa Barsdale. From the Sheriff's Office, we have Captain Santos Ramos, and we also have members of the Explosive Devices Unit. They work very hard in the enforcement of illegal fireworks as well as other explosive devices in the county. And I hope you all feel as safe as I do this morning, having all of these professionals here in our audience. So let's begin. We're here this morning because we actually really did have quite a loud and adventuresome 4th of July holiday in 2018. We received a number of complaints into all board offices regarding the use of illegal fireworks, the noise level, the host of issues that come along with that. So the board requested that the Office of the County Executive conduct some research and analysis on this issue and return to you with a report. In doing that research, we reached out to Metro Fire as well as the Sacramento Sheriff's Department to find out what their respective roles and responsibilities are on this issue, and came to learn of a task force that they both participate in, as well as representatives from the fireworks industry. So it's a very comprehensive group of people that meet on this issue, and they begin their meetings in January, which is why we are coming to you today. This is a little bit of an overview on what we currently have in our county code regarding explosive devices, fireworks. You'll see in the beginning of this section, it's section 0861 of the Sacramento County Code, talking about possessing, selling, and using and displaying firecrackers. There are exceptions that can be provided with permits issued by the fire chief or their designee. And then there are also exceptions for what are termed safe and sane fireworks, as identified in the health code. Currently, we have penalties and infractions in our county code. The first violation is of a fine not exceeding $100. The second violation is a fine not exceeding $200 within 1 year. The third, a fine not exceeding $500 with 1 year. And the fourth violation within 1 year is a fine not exceeding $1,000 or imprisonment in the county jail for not more than 6 months, or both.
Okay, hold on one second. Supervisor Natoli.
Yeah, Nance, can I go back to the previous slide for just a moment? I wanted to.
The penalties, or this one?
Article 7, yeah. So under the current county code, who, it talks about the unincorporated area then, and so who is given the authority to enforce that? Is it sheriff, or is it fire officials, or both?
It's my understanding that both have authority.
Okay, and did, in your work on this, I know you provided us a list of, I think, complaints that we received. Any idea how many citations have been, aside from the seizures of the large stashes and caches of it, have there been any citations under this or prosecutions? Does anybody know in recent years, and whether the last season and or recently?
Not to my knowledge. Currently, we will be touching on this issue when the Sheriff's Department representatives come up and talk about their role.
Okay, but so you say not to your knowledge that there's been any citations under this section or related sections. So basically it's on the books and it's not being enforced?
I wouldn't say that that is necessarily accurate. When it becomes a health safety issue connected to illegal fireworks, then there obviously is enforcement that comes into play. It's a very complicated issue.
Okay.
Sometimes calls come just because of noise level.
I think Supervisor Natoli, once we have fire and sheriff, they could address that.
I just want to know who was in enforcement. So the county code, both fire district personnel appropriately badged and given that authority, and law enforcement have the authorities under this section.
Yeah, I think you will hear some of the challenges, but Ms. Newton's getting at is there are challenges with this issue enforcing it, and that's part of what you will hear from our fire and law enforcement.
Okay. More to come.
And if I can say, on the health and safety code covers more. This is from 1992. It's there's more encompassed under the health and safety code. So my understanding is typically if there's any enforcement, it's under the health and safety code, not under the county ordinance. They wouldn't
enforce under county ordinance? They would use the health and safety?
They have more leeway and can have more punishment under the health and safety code.
Health and safety code. Okay, thanks.
And in fact, I've forwarded the presentation to the health and safety code section of that.
Supervisor Cerna.
Thank you. So, as it relates to the penalties slide, the previous one, I'm going to want to know, if it's not in the latter part of your presentation, exactly how much legal latitude we have to impose under these various categories, or perhaps even newly established categories in terms of the number of times violations occur, how much we can consider in terms of fines. Is it $1,000 for the fourth? Is that the maximum? Could we go up to $25,000? Could we make it excessively painful for people to engage in using illegal fireworks? That's what I want to know.
I think that's going to be covered. There is much more leeway under the health and safety code. They do go up for subsequent violations.
Okay, but I'm going to definitely want to know what those numbers are, not necessarily just the nuance of the circumstance. I'm going to want to know black and white what the numbers are.
Let's go forward. So this is obviously a lot of information in one slide. This talks about the possession of dangerous fireworks and some of the penalties that may be imposed. And so there's fine not less than $500 and no more than $1,000.
We can't hear
Speak
you.
up.
I apologize. This, if you look at the current slide, this talks about a little bit some of the fines of not less than $500 nor more than $1,000 or by imprisonment. So that's what we have currently on our code. We can talk to, I don't know if County Council has an opinion as far as prospectively what could a maximum fine be, but that could be something we could have researched. I don't believe I have that in my presentation today. At this point, I would like to turn over the podium to Metro Fire representatives to talk about what their role is in illegal fireworks enforcement and also some of the challenges that they have.
Good morning, Chair, Board of Supervisors. My name is Lisa Barsdale, and I'm the Fire Marshal for Sac Metro Fire District. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about Metro Fire's roles and responsibilities as it comes to services provided during the 4th of July season. Metro Fire covers approximately 360 square miles of unincorporated area, including the cities of Citrus Heights and Rancho Cordova. Sacramento County Sheriff's Department is our major law enforcement partner for providing enforcement services within the area. We do operate under a memorandum of understanding agreement where our arson investigators and the bomb unit function as a task force all year long. So they provide joint enforcement services throughout the year. Typically during the 4th of July season, our emergency responses raise to over 300 calls a day. So our primary goal is providing emergency response. The follow-up and subsequent to the emergency responses would be our responsibility to provide cause and origin investigations subsequent to any grass or structure fires that may occur. Currently, we have 2 arson investigators employed within the division, and on average, during the month of July, they perform 70 fire investigations, with over 50% of them occurring between June 28th and July 7th. Our other responsibilities during that month come to prevention and education. Those are both as it pertains to legal, so safe and sane fireworks. We go through a permitting process. We have approximately 135 of them annually within our jurisdiction, and we inspect all of the booths to make sure that they're compliant with all fire code regulations, and also to ensure that they're providing proper education information to the constituents that purchase the fireworks. It's our goal to provide information on the proper use of safe and sane fireworks and disposal of those fireworks. Next, I'd like to go over some basic information on the Greater Sacramento Area Fireworks Task Force. This task force was initially formed over 20 years ago with a goal of providing preventative services and then enforcement through the 4th of July season. It's comprised of fire and law enforcement agencies, the district attorney's office, and the fireworks industry. The roles and responsibilities of that group are very similar to what each of the individual jurisdictions provide during the fireworks period. We all work together to verify that safe and sane fireworks comply with codes, and make sure that we provide safety education and proper use and disposal of educational materials for all those individuals that are buying the product, and then partner with Sheriff's Department for the enforcement. And that's based off a health and safety code, penal code, and county code sections. With our staffing limited, and you'll hear from the Sheriff's Department as well, we really try to take a proactive approach on the enforcement. So looking for sales of large quantities of fireworks prior to the 4th of July, with the goal being taking them off the streets before we hit the 3rd and 4th.
And if I could interrupt there, Supervisor Natoli.
Yeah, Lisa, I just, with regards to the fireworks task force, I appreciate the background on that. You know, you said it's been in place for 20 years, and obviously verification of safe and sane. And to your last point, though, about enforcement, I get it about limitations, but I don't know whether those in the fire service and in law enforcement, share the same view that, and I'll just speak for myself, but not only seeing the pictures, but out and about during that weekend, it looked like a war zone. You see the pictures, and again, so you do what you can to stem the large-scale sale or importation, I guess, and some of that may be at the state level. But I think part of the reason why we're here today is that recognizing we're just a few months away again, and so I guess I'm curious about the level of concern in the fire service, because yes, you appropriately respond to emergency responses when a fire does occur, but in hearing from constituencies and constituents relative to, obviously it's the nearly the height of the summer season, you got dry grass, you've got all that, and then to see the proliferation, I mean it's like it's been geometric in the last few years, and very frankly, members of this board I think have been receiving a lot of community input about what's being done. And again, so I don't know if the task force has grappled. I guess my question is the task force grappled with that in recent years? And what was the download after the last season? Because I think, the prompting, obviously, that some of us, as members of the board, have, we wanted to have this public conversation, because the same public that you all respond to, and certainly in emergency situations, but also the regulated industry and the safe and sane, but this illegal fireworks and the use of them. That's the thing, is that there's nearly total disregard for the safety of others in light of we're going to have a good time and shoot the bottle rockets in the air. But anybody saw those pictures, which are publicly available, I'm sure archive websites of some of the TV networks, it was just incredible to see neighborhoods throughout this entire county, and even in the rural areas, which is not always, it's not all the responsibility of Metro. So I guess, Lisa, my question to you is, how has the task force grappled with this beyond the stats you're going to present here today and the discussion we're having here? What are people saying they think we need to do?
We all have issues and acknowledge that there's been an increase in illegal firework use over the years. We all struggle on the enforcement side with limited resources, and we all do our best to do enforcement around and during the 4th, including our normal responsibilities. Each individual district or agency provides the level of enforcement that they are able to provide. Law enforcement and fire are able to provide a certain amount of resources. The one thing, and I know sheriffs will go over this as well, is when we're responding to calls, they'll go over the number of calls we receive for these type of firecracker calls. But legitimately, you are running from call to call. So by the time you get to an address where you've received a complaint for service, they've either packed up their stuff and gone into the house, so they're not out using the fireworks. They've expelled them all, so they're not there and visible where we can see the use. And they're also not large quantities at that point, because they are celebrating for the 4th, and with the amount of calls and the time frame required for us to respond, there's minimal impact on the 3rd and 4th. That's why we've really tried to focus on the proactive to take those larger quantities off before we reach the 3rd and 4th.
But these are more just simply firecracker calls. I mean, you got bottle rockets and M80s and God knows whatever else the terminology is now out there. I mean,
and it's my understanding, and again, sheriffs can clarify that specifically on how those calls are. But all of those types of calls come under that firecracker type call. Certainly, if we have a significant injury or incident at an address, we would all respond. You'd get law enforcement and fire there.
Okay, just one other simple question then. So were any individuals cited for setting off those types of materials on July 3rd, 4th, whenever?
There is, and not And again, I don't have the total numbers, but each of the respective jurisdictions keep track of those stats, but we can certainly provide those to you.
So you don't know?
I don't have, no, I don't
Sacramento
have
cited?
them off the, we'd work with the Sheriff's Department. They can speak to you on the number.
But
Again,
can your officials cite, can the fire personnel cite a person, or do they have to have a sheriff's officer present or cite? That was my question earlier.
we do have the ability to cite. If we are out strictly running calls for enforcement, typically one of our investigators will team up with a sheriff's officer, but if we go to a call or respond to an incident, we are able to cite for use and possession.
Okay.
And with that, I will turn it over to the Sheriff's Department.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Santos Ramos. I'm a captain with the Sacramento Sheriff's Department. I currently command our North Division. I have with me Detectives Mike Baroni and John Eubanks, who are part of our arson and explosive ordnance detail. They do not operate under my command. We have a special operations unit that's commanded by one of our sheriff's lieutenants. So the role of what I'm going to speak to you about is specific to patrols response and our communication center's dispatch of patrol officers to calls related to fireworks. And what they'll be speaking to you about today is specific to their role in the arson task force, some of the challenges with regards to storage and disposal of those, and the proactive investigations as far as law enforcement goes. So I've been asked to talk a little bit about our roles and responsibilities for the Sheriff's Department. And I'll break it up a little bit. Our communications center is the primary call-taking function for calls for service related to fireworks, and that's both illegal fireworks as well as a slew of other calls for service that come in related to the 4th of July. The 4th of July is by far our busiest day of the year when it comes to volume of calls for service. We experience on average 25 to 30% increase in calls for service related to the 4th of July. Specifically when a call comes in, and it's hard to distinguish sometimes what the call is related to. Our dispatchers and call takers will input the call for service based off of the information that they're given by the caller. So if a caller calls in and gives us an address, 123 Main Street, and the only comments that they give us are that there are illegal fireworks going on, or they heard explosions related to fireworks, we will input that call as a 415 or a disturbance call with an FC, a firecracker code behind it. So we're able to categorize 415 firecracker calls and enumerate how many calls for service we get specifically on the 4th of July related to that. But there's a larger problem in that the 4th of July is an outdoor holiday, so there's a number of other activities go along with the use of fireworks and illegal fireworks. So you'll have block parties going on where alcohol is involved, and so there's a whole slew of other calls that might come in that have a firecracker or firework component to them, but the primary call for service is entered in as something else. Yes, sir.
Supervisor Cerna has a question.
Sorry to interrupt, but I want to make sure I understand the nature of these 415s. So it sounds to me like it's fairly broad, and in other words, it could be anything from someone setting off illegal aerial fireworks to setting off M80s or whatever. But does that also include folks that are using quote unquote safe and sane legal fireworks in places where they shouldn't? In other words, for example, the parkway or near the parkway or near grasslands, places where it's obvious that there's a real added fire risk even with the use of sanctioned fireworks.
Yes, sir. If somebody calls in and their complaint is related to the use of fireworks, whether or not they're safe and sane or whether or not they're illegal and causing noise disturbances,
Right.
that call would get entered in as a 415 firecracker call. Unless, of course, there's some broader, if there's a fire going on at the time, then that call would be coded in differently.
Okay. And I don't know that you have this at your fingertips, but guesstimate for me, what do you think the percentage is of the 415s that you respond to that are strictly illegal, the circumstance involved illegal fireworks versus the safe and sane variety?
So in 2018, we coded approximately 440 415 firecracker calls. And again, those are calls specifically where the information only lets us know that there's a firework component to it with no other crimes in progress.
So you don't really have that broken down in terms of the percentage between the safe and sane fireworks that are being used inappropriately versus the illegal fireworks?
That's correct.
Okay, just want to make sure I understand. Thank you.
So the 25 to 30% increase in calls for service provides a unique challenge to our communications center because the volume of calls for service that are coming in that day, and oftentimes they're operating at minimum staffing, it provides a ton more work for them. And so they are inputting these calls into the system with limited information, and the priority of that call, absent some other circumstances which cause us to believe that there's any sort of danger to the community or danger to an individual, the priority for us to respond to those calls for service, it's a lower priority for us. So we're challenged with staffing concerns in our communications center. We're challenged with additional volumes of calls for service just related to the holiday itself, and all the challenges that it provides for us with regards to, like I said, the partying and alcoholism and things that go on in that nature. So let's talk about our emergency response, for example. When we code those calls in at our communication center, because of the volume of those calls for service, we'll create a generalized call for service, a 415 firecracker call. And as people call in, we will enter that information in a scrolling, rolling note for our officers. So there's one event that's entered into the system with a number of addresses. As our officers are able to respond to those when other higher priority calls for service aren't in the queue or when they're not dispatched, then they can engage and respond to those calls for service. The problem, as Metro Fire mentioned, is that oftentimes, and most of the time, by the time we get to that call for service, the problem no longer exists.
Supervisor Peters.
Yes, ma'am.
Captain Ramos, I'm listening to you and looking at a written presentation also, and we're not quite on the same track, but one of the pages shows obstacles and challenges and an increase in call volume, and I'm trying to put together with what you said of 480, and this is showing 1,000 almost in 2017. So can the county executive explain that?
What Captain Ramos is talking about strictly in the sheriff's department, that's
So the
like,
other 530 are to the fire department?
could be fire department, could be CDPD, could be other jurisdictions.
In addition to that 430, 440 that I talked about, that's specific to the day, the 4th of July. I think the numbers that you're looking at cover a 2-month time period. So those are calls for service over a 2-month period related to fireworks. And if you look at our...
Does it include the 4th of July, the 2 months?
It
So
does. It's actually from June 1st to August 1st.
Okay, because people buy their firecrackers early and...
Yeah, you'll notice a bell curve that exists with our calls for service related to fireworks that reach their peak on the 4th of July and then begin to taper off. But that first week before the 4th of July and the week after tend to be, that's our busiest time of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Natoli.
Yeah, just to follow on though, but this chart says number of firecracker calls, in quotes, 415 calls. It says 415s. That's what it says. It doesn't say other calls. And it's the span I get is over the month, but to your point, Nav, it says the 415, these are calls or sheriff's department calls.
I think Supervisor Totally, what I'm saying is that's the task force, not just, Captain Ramos was talking about was just what came into our dispatch into the sheriff.
So this chart isn't sheriff?
It's sheriff plus any
Okay.
other jurisdictions.
Okay.
So remember, the task force has other local jurisdictions in it, and that's what this chart shows. What they're
It
talking
should have
about
had
is,
several colors in it for other
So
organizations.
in other words, SAC PD uses the same code, 415.
yes.
In addition to that, our dispatch center may receive a call for service and enter it in as a 415 call. And if there's a fire or a need for fire response, then we'll transfer that call to fire for them to respond as well.
I think what we can do in the future is that we can show you what, if we can get to it, what's the unincorporated piece and what's in other jurisdictions. So that way you have a feel for where these calls are coming from.
The other comment would be, we don't have 2018 data yet? For June to, for that period of time? I'm sure you got it somewhere. It doesn't show on this chart, though.
I will follow up on that. This is 17, but the captain did speak about 18, and I think with the task force, we'll get you that number for you.
Okay,
So, yes, sir, we have 1,248 calls, 415 firecracker calls.
1,248 calls that 2 month period?
For 2 months. So
And
that's from June 1st to August 1st.
Okay, and how did that compare to the year previous? That was for 18?
Yes, sir, 2017 was 1,085.
Okay, so about 200, not quite 200 increase in calls year over year.
Roughly, yes, yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. That data is helpful. Yeah.
And that's a 2-month period. I have some numbers with regards to the specific day of 4th of July.
Okay.
So in 2016, we fielded or categorized 128 415 firecracker calls.
Okay.
In comparison to 2017, that increased to 175. And then there was a dramatic jump in 2018 to 440.
So I think one of the main points that you will see that this data is showing is that there has been a jump in these calls, and that's what Captain and the folks from the fire department are saying, that the volume coming in is creating an issue for them, for their staffing.
And those volume increases in calls for service aren't just specific to 415 firecracker calls. They cover, those increases cover our total volume of calls for service as well. So in addition to firecracker related calls, we're receiving more emergency and non-emergency calls for service in general in the county. So the 4th of July, as I said, is our highest volume day for calls for service. And so it really is a drain and depletes our resources, which oftentimes, especially during the summer and holiday seasons, we're operating at minimum staffing. So by its very nature, it provides a unique challenge for us to even respond to firecracker or firework related calls. Then by the time we respond to them, the problem is gone or over with, or the situation is so dangerous because there's a block party with 150 people and there's illegal fireworks going on. It's too unsafe for us to send 2 officers into an environment like that to find a small amount of fireworks when 2 streets over, we see the same thing going up in the air. So the 4th of July provides a very, very unique challenge for us when it comes to a law enforcement response as far as patrol goes. And that's why we try to effectively use our illegal fireworks task force on the front end of things to proactively reduce as much as we can or limit the amount of fireworks that are out there on the 4th of July. And I'll let the gentleman here comment on their efforts from a task force.
Thank you, Captain. Sir. So what we try to do prior to the 4th of July is get on Craigslist, go online, try to find people who are selling illegal fireworks, and try to target them specifically. Maybe do a targeted buy-bust operation where we can take them down and get their fireworks. The problem that becomes of that is storage of these fireworks. That becomes our ultimate problem in the county. Disposal of illegal fireworks or any fireworks is an extremely dangerous job. It's one of our most dangerous jobs as the bomb squad is to get rid of illegal fireworks and legal fireworks. So storage in our explosive area that we have in our range is quite hazardous. So we're trying to accommodate the increase in fireworks by getting some more storage containers, properly outfitting them according to ATF standards and to be able to store some fireworks. Disposing of them around the 4th of July becomes very hazardous to our range staff, to the branch center, and to the horse program that's out there, because we have the potential to start fields on fire by getting rid of illegal fireworks. Usually with our controlled explosives that we use and that we can do our normal, I say EOD type of activities out there, we know that we're not going to have any kickouts. We know that we're not going to send something into a burning field and start a fire. With these fireworks, we don't know that. We can try to guesstimate what we can put on these fireworks to get rid of them, but ultimately, if we hit a shot off and it goes into a field, we potentially start a field on fire. And so to have either fire standing by or medic standing by while we're out there is it's a lot of work for us around that period of time.
Supervisor Cerna.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes, sir.
Is detonation really the only way you can neutralize the fireworks?
We have to, so in order to get rid of fireworks, we could potentially burn them, but that becomes a whole other EPA type issue. We could pay a company, Clean Harbors, to come out and pick them up. That's a very expensive issue. So that's, I think, around $10,000 roughly for a pound. And that's not an exact estimate, but that's kind of what I got from that company, because they have to ship
10,000
it.
per pound?
Per pound?
It's 10,000, I think, per pallet. So I got it. I told them 1 pound of fireworks, but either way, it's 1 pallet of fireworks is roughly $10,000. And if I got a 20 by 8 foot Connex that's filled with fireworks, that's potentially, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 to get rid of it the right way.
So there's no way to kind of chemically neutralize them. It's not just as simple as dunking them in a pool or something like that. You have to actually make sure that they don't pose the same threat in the wrong hands, I guess.
So we can function them as designed, meaning that we can go out there with a medic standing by with our entire team of 6 bodies and potentially some other EOD units, and basically light off illegal fireworks. And then once they're lit off and they're done and we've soaked them in water, then we can throw the cardboard in the trash. So, and we've done that with some of our larger displays of fireworks, just to try to make room in our Connex for incoming fireworks for the next season.
I'm curious. We do have a commercial fireworks display group or company that takes up space out of McClellan Park.
Pyro spectaculars.
Yeah, in fact they use some of the old munitions bunkers out there to store their mortars, I believe. Have we engaged in discussions with them to see if there's any economy of scale, something at less cost when we hear things like $10,000 a pallet to dispose of these things, that perhaps we can like commingle with what they perhaps have to satisfy regulatorily in terms of disposal of munition or mortars they don't use, to see if there's a possibility of doing that?
I've spoke with that company because we have some pretty big charges at our range still that we haven't been able to get rid of. I think we've got a couple mortar shells that are in excess of 6 or 8 inch mortar shells, which are commercial grade.
You confiscated those?
We've got them during seizures.
Wow.
And because we're the bomb squad, we have to take those from any outside agency or the fire department to be able to store it, because we're the only place that has an explosive storage locker within the county. Pyro Spectacular said that they would not take stuff from us because they don't know where it's come from, and we understood that. I am trying to work with them on getting some training out at our range to be able to set some of these off in a controlled manner, but that's kind of in the process. So I'm not there yet.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions from a law enforcement response that we might answer for you?
Any questions from the board?
If I could, just quickly, so do you, in addition to tracking the calls, do you keep some record of where you actually made citations or arrests, and were there any? I guess for, you roll through the neighborhood, you're right, you're going to get to them when you get to them, but I think that's part of what we're seeing, I think, in face of this, and it's the challenge, obviously, law enforcement and fire personnel face, but is kind of the lawlessness, is that, there's no consequence. If I get caught with a mortar, yeah, I may end up in jail or dead if I don't know how to use the thing. But beyond that, I'm trying to get some sense of what consequence there is currently, just in light of everybody's challenge with resources and the practicalities of the matter, because if I look forward to what we're headed for right now, unless we do something differently, you're going to have, probably the same, more volume of calls, and you're not going to have any greater resources. You're going to have a holiday weekend. And so, what we saw last year and last couple of years, this increase is probably just going to keep going that way. And so I guess my question is that, are there any examples, and it may be only a small number, but it says, at least to some folks who may otherwise be, scofflaws, that, one, this is dangerous, the materials you're using are illegal to possess or use, and there is going to be some consequence. So I guess that's my question, Captain, were there any citations issued for, the executing out in the field illegal fireworks usage, or was it drunken behavior or something like that? Might be related.
So I'm not prepared to give you any numbers with regards to how many citations. We would have to research specific either health and safety codes or county codes, run those through our records database to see if there was a citation issued for that particular violation. The problem with any of the violations is they don't carry much of a hammer. All those health and safety violations
and that goes
are
back to some of the
misdemeanors.
questions earlier, but if there's no consequence at all, then it doesn't matter how much we got written on paper, and if practically you can't, there's no ability to enforce outside the law says you can if you can get to it and so forth. I guess that's kind of what we're faced with, though, is that this just general lawlessness, and it does beyond the fact that it's illegal, the threat that it poses, for people blowing their fingers off or setting somebody's house on fire or whatever, and it just and it's growing, and I think that consternation and angst then is trending to folks saying you ought to ban fireworks altogether. But if we can't even deal with the illegal portion, what would it mean? So what would be the consequence? Obviously, then that has a whole different net effect relative to charitable, fundraising efforts and such. And so I think that's what we're faced with, is that certainly as representatives of the entire county, we're hearing from constituents more and more is do something, and so and it's obvious that something is being done on the front end, but during that period of time that's becoming extended, I think to your point, even looking at that, people start shooting them off, a week and a half in advance, and then even afterwards, and so but those are more sporadic and periodic, but yeah.
Supervisor Tully, if I could just, a couple comments. Our Metro Fire folks do have some obstacles and challenges that they want to go over. There's some stuff that they want to talk about. But the task force is convening next week, and a lot of this feedback, they're going to take that back, see what can be done proactively, as the Sheriff's Office has said that to do a lot of stuff, try to stem that illegal trade back. I think Supervisor, certainly the question that you have about how high can we go on these fines, I did speak with the fire captain, if they can bring that into that venue and discuss that if we do increase the fees, what does that do? I think what we've heard today is the fines. You're right. Enforcement is an issue, but I think that's pretty good dialogue. I think this is a long overdue discussion that we've not had, but next week they are meeting. Once we get a little bit more feedback from them, we'll bring issues back to you, report back on what kind of progress is being made. Because I think the main thing is up front. We got to make sure that the illegal fireworks, what can we do to stem the tide on that one? So,
well, I think optimally we'd like to know what is the realm of the possible in terms of just making it extraordinarily, like I said earlier, painful for folks that would otherwise engage in setting off 6-inch diameter mortars and other illegal fireworks, and to do that, to set all that in motion, because we're tired of it, quite frankly, by this season, right? And if that's in the realm of the possible, that'd be, I think, probably to a person what we'd like to see happen, or at least to have the opportunity to discuss that well in advance, so that we could, again, if it's the will of the board, implement that for this upcoming 4th of July.
Correct.
I had a separate question for the Sheriff's Department before they leave the podium. think I know the answer, but I want to ask the question anyways. So we've recently deployed, in cooperation with the City of Sacramento ShotSpotter, or at least we're operating in conjunction with Sac PD in the south part of the city and county. Is there a way that system, I know it's supposed to, it prides itself on distinguishing between things like firecrackers and gunshots, but is there a way that it can be calibrated, or maybe just on the natural, it can at least tell us where explosive fireworks are going off?
I apologize for my ignorance when it comes to ShotSpotter technology. My limitations and knowledge are that it does distinguish between gunshots and fireworks. We would have to go back to the company and ask what those capabilities would be.
I'd like to know the answer to that, because I mean, we do have these very sensitive microphones that are actually deployed out in the community in undisclosed locations, and if we have at least the ability to track sound out there, I think it's an important question to ask and have answered, is whether or not that could be somehow utilized to perhaps help the sheriff's department when you are getting or anticipating getting all those calls at the apex of the bell curve for activity during and around 4th of July, to maybe hone in geographically on where that activity is taking place.
And we have an understanding, at least of our calls for service. So if we look at some of our hotspots that exist throughout the county, the majority of our 415 firecracker-related calls are being generated from kind of the Rancho Cordova Sheriff's East Division area. But when you look at our overall calls for service, they follow the pattern that we experience on any given day, is that our calls for service are very, very spread out. So what that's related to, I'm not sure. Is it because Rancho Cordova has its own fireworks display, and so you see a higher volume of calls for service with regards to noise complaints? I don't know. The challenge with ShotSpotter would probably be aerial fireworks, in that they get shot off from one location, explode in another location. So it would be those ground explosive fireworks like M80s and other, excuse my ignorance, the types of fireworks, but those explosions that occur on ground, ShotSpotter may be able to detect where those are, but the aerial fireworks would provide their own unique challenge. So,
thank you.
Supervisor Peters.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, you're not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
we got a couple more.
I had a couple of questions. To go back to counting the calls for service, do you determine whether they're legal versus illegal fireworks at any point in that counting? I mean, because some people are going to complain about legal fireworks too.
Correct. So we don't, when an individual calls in, the amount of data that we put into the call is limited to what they provide. So if they're calling in saying, hey, there's a group of kids using fireworks across the street and they're making a bunch of noise, we would enter that in as a 415 firecracker call. There's no way for us.
So they're all lumped together.
Correct. They're all lumped together. So absent an officer responding out to that specific address and then clearing the call with some information that lets us know that it was illegal fireworks, no, we wouldn't have that data.
Okay. We've talked a little bit about increasing fines here. In your experience, if the fines went up drastically, would that make any difference to people, do you think?
So in my personal limited experience with regards to fines and punitive action, I would say it would have a minimal effect, if any.
Okay. Then earlier this week, I and probably other members of the board had a quick meeting with some members of the task force. And so I just want to say, on the membership of this task force is the Sheriff's Department, the Fire Department, and industry people. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So it seems like that's a group that we ought to target for coming up with some ideas. And one of the things that seems obvious to me is some sort of education campaign in May, June, whatever the month is, about why it's bad to be shooting off fireworks and that there are fines of some kind. And I mean, that's something that this task force could possibly do. I mean, just that alone, people get busy, they don't think about it, and I think that would be worthwhile, and I'm sure the media would love to help with that too. So I would ask your task force to take a look at that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Supervisor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In some of the information we've received, even today at our place, but I know that we have industry representatives here, and they've, basically highlighted some things that have been done in other communities as being potentially things we could consider. But I think in light of what you've talked about relative to how we process calls, at least in the unincorporated area, and I guess I trust the Rancho Cordova where sheriff provides the law enforcement under contract, is that, they've touted this, there's a smartphone app that called Nail 'em, and that, allows for GPS location and so forth. And I guess that's okay for reporting, but I think it still goes, it kind of begs the question about how you're able to respond and whether you're able to respond. And I don't know, I guess if you, any one of the three of you familiar with that app, and how does that plug into our dispatch center, or does it? Or does it go directly, because I guess there's the ability to go directly to the sheriff.
If we can let Metro Fire answer that they're probably better versed on the Nail 'em app.
So it doesn't come to law enforcement?
To my knowledge, there is no communication between that application and our sheriff's dispatch center.
Okay.
The information collected on the app is just gathered. It's not plugged into either one of our dispatches. That we'd have to monitor the app and then try to dispatch for services for that. Right now, it's just utilized to gather information on where we might have target areas so that we can focus enforcement in that areas for the following year, but it's not tied into anything. It's simply gathering information.
So it's a relatively little use with currency. You can use it to look back to see where you've had, and they did provide that data over a 3-year period.
Correct.
Where you get calls for service, but, the sheriff tracks that. I trust the Metro and other fire, track that anyway, so I'm not saying it's unhelpful, but it has no real-time consequence then.
Correct.
Interesting. Okay, thanks.
Supervisor Frost.
In our brief meeting this last week with some of the industry partners, they were talking about some of the things that other jurisdictions are having success with, and one of the things they mentioned was social host ordinance, or a policy that would create fines or penalties, not just for those who are lighting off those rockets, but for those who are allowing that to happen at their home. And so I guess, and I don't know if they're going to be coming up and speaking publicly to share a little bit more information, but I wanted to mention that when the task force is looking at this whole big picture, I think I agree that maybe our fines are just irrelevant. They're so small, and that there's cost associated with disposing of illegal fireworks, and so creating some more pain, or I don't know what you call it, but penalties associated with anyone involved. I think it'd be important for our task force to look at what others are doing, and can we strengthen that, what that looks like, the fines, and is it on someone's property, and do we penalize someone, a property owner, for allowing that on their property, and do we create some kind of revenue recovery included within our fines or on top of our fines? I don't know how you quantify the cost per rocket, but that's what I think would maybe hopefully discourage them more. So I was wondering, have you looked into these types of possible ideas on how the task force could deal with penalties and fines?
I don't know if any of that research has been done in the past. I know we're definitely open to analyzing industry best practices with regards to response and enforcement of those. So it's definitely something that the task force can look into and discuss.
Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, is that the presentation?
Thank you.
I think Sacramento's
Metro
first.
Fire just had one more slide they want to cover.
Good afternoon, Chair, Board of Supervisors. Greg Castantini, Deputy Fire Chief for Metro Fire. Thank you. I'd like to publicly thank Nancy Newton for her assistance with this presentation and research as well. So looking at the bigger picture, and I get what you guys are asking for, what's going to be done? And that's exactly what myself and Fire Marshal Barsdale and some of the sheriff officers met with the state of California Fire Marshal's office about 3 weeks ago. What's going to be done? They've clearly told us this is a statewide problem, and it's a massive problem. Illegal fireworks are coming in from Nevada uncontrolled by the truckloads. One example of a bust that was done this last July by CAL FIRE in Los Angeles netted 6 arrests, 50,000 pounds of illegal fireworks. Annually, they estimate 200,000 pounds of illegal fireworks come into the state. We've looked at other large jurisdictions who have the same issues of the ability for us to be able to respond and effectively do something is very challenging, that the calls and complaints clearly exceed the agency's capacities. So we're looking at 3 issues: staffing, the volume of illegal fireworks, and the disposal comes down to budgeting. Unfortunately, the state has cut budgeting for their arson bomb staff. They're down to one arson bomb investigator for the whole state of California. Under Governor Brown's administration, they put forth Senate Bill 794, which was really going to add a percentage of the sales was going to go towards education enforcement. That was turned down by the legislature as that was deemed to be a tax. So they've tried that part. Future legislation, we're going to ask the supervisors to work with your constituents down at the state capitol to support future legislation of any new ideas that come up. But the state is struggling as well of what can they do. They've tried, the additional fees, and that's been stricken down as well. Luckily, though, this year, the Governor Brown, when he left office, they did put $3.6 million for this year. That's out of vehicle license fees for the disposal and some enforcement and education. The new governor has put down $3.6 million annually reoccurring in his new budget, so we'll need support for the legislators to keep that funding coming from the state as well. But the consensus is from the state is they've tried a lot of different things. The big communities such as us are going to struggle with the illegal fireworks moving forward. That's a big struggle.
All right. Any questions?
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say, this is non-fire issue, did you say the money coming is from DMV license fees?
That's correct.
Our car registration fees?
That's
are
correct.
paying-
License fees, they took $3.6 million for this year because annually they just cut the budget out of the enforcement and education side every year for the illegal fireworks.
I understand that. I just wonder why my car registration
There you
fees
go.
are paying for this program.
Yes.
Yeah,
That is
what's
correct.
the nexus?
And then Supervisor Natoli, to answer questions, some recent data that Metro Fire pulled, we looked at about 15 local fire agencies in a county, and out of all the illegal fireworks issues that we responded to from fires, there was 12 citations and 6 arrests. So really not that much. We look at 2016, some data I have, we had 45 structure fires, and we had 140 vegetation fires. So clearly the calls for service just exceed our capacity. We're, like Fire Marshal Barsdale said, we're literally going from call to call to call just to save life and property. And unfortunately, the enforcement side goes down to budget and staffing, is like you've heard. Part of the recommendations we'll carry forward with the task force this week is to address several concerns that I heard today. Is what is the max penalties that could be addressed? Supervisor Cerna and also Supervisor Peters' education efforts. We'll continue to work on those with the task force.
Supervisor Cerna.
Thank you. Do you have any of the data on the calls for service by Metro Fire that are specific to the Parkway?
I can certainly get that. About 3 years ago, it was excessive. It has since died down with the enforcement of local authorities, and also the Parks Patrol has really cleaned that up. I can sure get that to you, sir.
That'd be helpful.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Supervisor Natoli.
Yeah, and just maybe drawing lines between citations and arrests, which, as you said, are very minimal, and then the number of fires, both structure as well as vegetation. Was that for 2016? You said that was just 1 year, or that was over the last 3 years?
Yeah, that was 1 year, 2016.
Okay. And I think, I guess I would just speculate this, but that if we aren't able to do more on the enforcement end of it, obviously some of the advanced work, then the potential, at least, for more structure fires and more vegetation fires because again, if people just figure there's no consequence, so I'm going to do what I want to do as long as I can get my hands on the material, then I think that risk factor goes up, and those are expensive to respond to too. Obviously, you're protecting life and property, but and that's not just a perceived threat, because if I again, maybe your 17, 18 numbers, and I'd be interested to know that. Maybe the task force can get that at least for 17 to see. Again, I don't know if there's correlation or not, and I don't want to draw a false correlation, but that if we aren't able to do some enforcement to say to folks, hey, I don't care what the fine is, because if you don't make the arrest or citation and it isn't prosecuted, it's of no consequence anyway. It's just it's in the code, and for those that are going, I think what Captain Ramos said, that that people aren't thinking about that, so I guess as you're looking at this, to me that's an important aspect of it, because if you don't do more on the front end or in the immediacy of it, then I think the potential is, and obviously you folks are responding to it, and then you get called off anyway, for something that's much more serious. So, thanks.
Okay. Thank you. We do have some members of the public that would like to speak. Dennis Ravel.
That's going to be as high as it goes. Thank you, and good morning, Chair Kennedy and members of the board. My name is Dennis Ravel. I'm here on behalf of our client, T&T Fireworks. We've had the privilege of working with Sacramento and its predecessor agencies, as well as Sacramento County Sheriff and the other law enforcement agencies in fires since 1990 on the task force that was formed to deal with the illegal fireworks, as well as pursue and support the education and proper use of safe and sane fireworks within the greater Sacramento area. I'd be happy to fill in any gaps and answer any of the questions that you've asked of the previous presenters. It's fair to say that, as Chief Castantini said, the state of California has the primary and in many instances the exclusive jurisdiction of dealing with illegal fireworks, and for too many years, unfortunately, rather than dealing with that largely for budgetary reasons, they have ignored the problem or abdicated that responsibility to local government, and it's become not only the first line of defense, but the only line of defense against illegal fireworks. I think that based upon this morning's presentation and your questions, and in the interest of time, limitations that I have, we would respectfully request that the task force invite a representative of this board, the county executive and county council, to attend the next meeting, and that we explore and discuss all of the options that are out there on the table, from administrative fines to cost recovery provisions in that ordinance, a social host ordinance, as well as explore some of the alternatives and innovations that have been employed in other jurisdictions across the state, and see what, if any of those, make sense for Sacramento County that we then can bring back to this board and report and move forward in a time that it can be implemented before this 4th of July. Just to single out one of those, since fine levels are important to this board.
If you could wrap up, that'd be great. Thank you.
The administrative fine process put forward
by Senate Bill 839 in January 2008 is critical to the success of any fine process because of its ease of administration. It doesn't require that an officer has to be present when the crime is committed, and there are many advantages that would make the enforcement process much easier and facilitate the job that the Sheriff Department has to do. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you. The next card, I'm afraid I can't read the first name. The last name is Hernandez, and the address is on Sarda Way.
How you doing, board? Thank you very much for allowing me to come up here and speak on behalf of the legal fireworks, not the illegal ones that are so much detrimental to the development of Sacramento. Yes, you are going to have an increase of calls and volumes because apparently you guys are doing something right. People want to come here. I live in where Rancho Cordova is. We have a big fireworks display that goes on there. People come from the hills because they can't burn. They have their legal fireworks there, so they come down to Rancho, and with that they bring their money. And we have a nonprofit organization, the Rancho Cordova Optimist Club, which has the booth right in front of Safeway on Folsom Boulevard. In so many words, we are a nonprofit organization that raises money inside the community and gives back to the youth. So we have funding that goes on and basically covers ourselves for the entire year. Without that, we basically would not exist in Rancho. We do also have a recognition for the youth in Rancho and for the respect for law aspect as well for the Sacramento Fire Department, Sacramento Sheriffs, and the Rancho Cordova Police Department as well. That helps us out as well. And to wrap it up in so many words, yes, illegal fireworks do cause more harm than good, but at the same time, from my standpoint, to increase a fine and to make it more enforcing would make a big dramatic difference. Just like you would take a child at school and enforce the rules there. Well, we got to do the same thing with these knuckleheads. Think they can just come in here and legally set these fireworks off and keep on moving. But at the same time, you have to look at from every aspect of from good to bad to, you know, if it helps out and benefits in any way. And for our aspect, that these illegal fireworks do come in here illegally, but at the same time, the legal, safe and sane fireworks, we're finding out that people have more money and are willing to spend that money.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Richard Hernandez. Okay. Thomas Steinbach. Followed by Franklin Meter.
Good afternoon, Chair and Board of Supervisors. My name is Tom Steinbach. I am a chairman of our fireworks booth at the United Methodist Church in Rancho Cordova. Real brief, our programs usually help a lot of kids as well as, thank you, as well as our scout group. So, you know, we really, for us as a nonprofit group, fireworks is very, very important to us. My recommendation, at least I was kind of thinking, because I have a neighbor down the street that actually likes to light off these illegal fireworks as well. He did it on Sunday during the Super Bowl game. And I'm honestly, as a citizen, I'm not happy with it. And I thought about, why don't we utilize Crime Stoppers? Maybe have an app where we can actually photograph the area and maybe be able to turn that in, upload it to law enforcement and the fire, and let them go and do their job. And then maybe, you know, subsequently, if we can get an arrest and a conviction out of it, have them pay for the training programs, have them pay for the rewards that Crime Stopper had paid out, and pay for the illegal disposal of it. To me, it's kind of a waste of money for these people to be buying all these illegals and watching them go off, and my group is really selling them professionally, safe and sane fireworks year after year after year. My group just alone has been doing this for over 40 years. So, you know, it would be a detrimental impact to us, hypothetically, if we, and no win in any which way, if we try in any which way to eliminate all fireworks. So safe and sane is the way to go, but I think we ought to enforce the point of getting rid of the illegals, and this would be my solution to it.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Thank you. Thank you. After Mr. Meter, Michael Duffick.
Thank you. I'm Frank Meter, and thank you for all the law enforcement people and the board today for taking their time to listen to this information. Our organization raises money for youth. We have a bird club, and we help youth get started in their goal here. One of the things that I can tell you, we've heard it a little bit, but fireworks stands sell only legal fireworks, only safe and sane fireworks. But I will tell you, it's not unusual for people to come to our stand and say, can you tell me where to get the explosive types? And they routinely come to see us thinking that that's a possibility. And so one of the things I think, getting the word out there that something is going to happen if you're using illegal fireworks, and that we do a pretty good job working with the organizations to let people know that only safe and sane fireworks are legal in the county of Sacramento and neighboring counties. I will tell you that we've heard tonight, this afternoon I should say, I will tell you that Pahrump, Nevada, and the state of Washington, you can get all the illegal fireworks you want, anytime you want, all year round. It's just not 7 days. And we see that and hear that from customers that come in and say, what do you do if your neighbors have these illegal fireworks? And so this is, the public, I think, in a lot of respects, tries to help us, but it's a very difficult job. I think all the organizations that you see in the county of Sacramento are doing great things to help the youth in Sacramento with their safe and sane fireworks, and I think it's something we want to keep going, not because I'm involved in it. I'm a little bit embarrassed sometimes to say that our stand has been involved supporting the community for 49 years, and I've been the chairman for those, say, 49 years. And so anyway, I will tell you that we're proud of what we've done, and so are, I'm sure, all the other stands, and thank you so much for your help.
Thank you. Supervisor Cerna.
Yeah, Mr. Meter, before you leave the podium, I have a question for you. First of all, thank you for your testimony, and I think we all appreciate the fact that there are so many nonprofits that use the safe and sane fireworks sales each year to to try and capitalize on what little you can raise to carry out your various missions. So I, for one, am very appreciative of that. But you mentioned that you have, in some instances, people that walk up and ask you about how to acquire the illegal variety. Is there any information, hard copy information, flyers, for instance, that are routinely handed out, perhaps with each sale, not just waiting for someone to come in and ask for illegal fireworks, that you distribute to consumers so that they know the penalties, for instance, for possessing illegal fireworks?
Well, our people that work the stands are real knowledgeable about this. I don't know if there's a piece, but we're pretty good at getting that information out, and I would think that's the same at pretty much all the stands. On the 4th of July, from any stand, for instance, we can see explosive fireworks going off. We can feel them, and I'm sure I'm not surprising anybody. I think it's a common knowledge that people know that there are such a thing as illegal fireworks. But if they can get by with getting them and have that big bang and make all that noise Even people that we wouldn't think would do that in their neighborhood will do that in their neighborhood.
But it
sometimes.
sounds to me like there's no standardized protocol that someone that is selling on behalf of their charitable organization, Safe and Sane Fireworks,
I wouldn't say
uses to educate and inform the public about the consequences of possessing and using illegal fireworks. And perhaps the task force, if it hasn't already explored the fact that you might have a bit of a self-identified audience, those in fact that do come to these seasonal booths for Safe and Sane Fireworks that start asking about illegal fireworks. Maybe that's where we start, and it's not just waiting for those folks to come and ask the question. With your receipt for the box of Safe and Sane Fireworks, you get a reminder about the penalties involved with the use of illegal fireworks.
Well, Mr. Cerna, I sure wouldn't want to say that nobody is doing this. I will tell you that TNT Fireworks, where we get all of our fireworks, they do a lot of things to help out in this regard.
Yeah, I don't argue with that. I'm not hearing you say that it's standardized. You're saying that people are pretty knowledgeable, but I don't hear someone saying, oh yeah, it's for all of our booths, we do hand out this information. You're saying it's kind of ad hoc, that's all.
Yeah, I think that's probably correct. Okay. I will tell you that I live in a neighborhood that you can't have fireworks. It is not unusual to walk in my backyard the day after the 4th of July and find bottle rockets that have been shot in my neighborhood. So it's a tough task.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cerna. Thank you all.
Thanks, Fred. Michael Duffick, followed by Edmundo Garcia.
Good morning. First time here. My name is Michael Duffick. I am the president of the Sacramento Youth Band Parents Association. We've been an association since 1957, serving Sacramento County and communities. We are a nonprofit organization consisting of kids from 10 years old to 21. We have concert band, 3 jazz bands, a junior band, and now we've just started some community outreach for a beginning band. And so we're trying to get the kids starting as young as 8 years old and to go on. I can honestly tell you, over the course of 62 years, we started selling fireworks in 1963. We would not be here today if it wasn't for fireworks. It's a major, major part of our budget. And I have been selling fireworks since I've been 13. Actually, before there was an age minimum, I was working the stand. I'm 58 years old, still doing it. But it's an amazing thing. We do constantly educate. We do get the customers that come, hey, where do you find the Roman candles or the bottle rockets and stuff? And we let them know they're completely illegal. We do have signs that are posted that illegal fireworks, call the authorities. We do have a phone number there. We do pass out, there is a brochure, fire marshal brochure that goes out. So there is a lot of information out there that we can go. And we are the disciples to go out there and tell everybody about this. There are fireworks stands everywhere, and we could be the ones that are out there telling and preaching the good news of fireworks. You will not do away with fireworks. If something happens to the stands, the illegals will be more and more, because there are a group of people that will just go out there and do it anyway. I was blown away this morning about the amount of fines. I think the fines should increase, absolutely. But in closing, I just want to thank you guys for all your support over the years. I want to thank the fire department for their education, their support, and the guidance, and the sheriff's department that ultimately keep us all safe.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you. Edmundo Garcia. Nope. All right. That is the last card. Would have any comments?
Nope. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
When we would anticipate a report back, I guess that's my question.
If you can give me some flexibility, work with the task force to have their meeting next week, and
Yes.
we'll agendize it after that.
Okay, all right, that's the intent.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Okay.
That's all for your morning items.
All right, then we have closed session.
Yes, we do.
All right, then we will recess.